everyone, and welcome to the Diamond Report Live. Hope you guys are doing okay out there. 9:01 p.m. on March 1st, 2026. This is your host, Doug Diamond. Missed you guys a lot. Thought we'd do it again this week on Sunday night, starting at 9 p.m. Central, just like every week, right? Anyway, so yes, as the screen picture here says, the screenshot, Operation Epstein has commenced. So I'm sure you guys know all about this. The World War III situation, the scenario we talked about a little bit last week, has indeed started to unfold. So here we are. So I thought we would take a look at the news. Got quite a bit to look at tonight. Hopefully I can get to it all. That I'm not sure about. I think I have more tabs than normal even. I've got some of them on a different document. There's so many actually. So anyways, this is your host, Doug Diamond. It's the Diamond Report Live, and hello and welcome. It looks like we've got a good crowd in chat. Welcome back to Mr. Mark. He's back. So good to see him in chat, and hello to everyone else in there as well. Miss Emily and everyone. So, yes, let's take a look at the news. So the first, I've got a couple pictures I wanted to show you guys first. Screenshots. This from Owen Schroyer. More Iran strikes than deep state arrests. More Iran strikes than Epstein arrests. More war spending than Doge cuts. Board of Peace launches war. Ran against the unpopular Middle East foreign policy of Bush. Said we'd put America first. Foreign interests happier than Americans. Yeah. We all know that it is make Israel great again. And apparently that is words to live and die by, apparently, from the Trump administration, because that is what they are looking to do. And I think we know now, at least one reason why they got rid of Mr. Charlie Kirk, because I think he would have had a lot to say about this newest Iran strike. He said previously, this is insane. Regime change will result in a bloody civil war, killing hundreds of thousands and creating another massive Muslim refugee crisis. Topping a leader is never as easy as you think. It almost always results in further involvement, a civil war, and chaos. Resist this. Yeah, no kidding. That is one reason they wanted to get rid of Mr. Kirk, because they knew that he had the president's ear. So therefore, he cannot talk him out of it or give him alternative facts, alternative information that he might not hear from the likes of Susie Wiles or Bibi Netanyahu or others who have much more important things to say, so they think, right? Well, anyway, here we go. Hal Turner Radio Show. Turns out he does have a few articles on his site now. I logged out just to see what was available publicly, so I don't have to worry about giving away any of his information from his site. Now, what we're looking at tonight are all articles that you can get to freely and publicly on halturnerradioshow.com. So I thought we'd take a look at a few of these things just because he's got some pretty good intel, some pretty good connections with what's going on. U.S. and Israel are attacking Iran, major combat operations. This is posted yesterday, talking about all of the almost play-by-play, minute-by-minute type things. I'll read a little bit of this, and you guys can check it out if you're interested. At about 1 a.m. Eastern U.S. time yesterday, February 28th, Israel launched what it called a preemptive attack, and the U.S. joined with major combat operations against Iran, including hundreds of airstrikes. Iran is responding, launching missiles at U.S. military bases in multiple countries, including the U.S. Navy 5th Fleet headquarters in Bahrain, shown above. So you can see that blast that hit. So, and then we've got several embedded videos here as well. Israel said it launched a preemptive attack against Iran, pushing the Middle East into a renewed military confrontation and further dimming hopes for a diplomatic solution. They never wanted that, did they? Israel never wanted a diplomatic solution. They always wanted to go blast Iran. And that is what they're getting. Whatever Israel wants, they seem to be able to get. U.S. President Trump urged Iranians to take cover during the strikes, but then said, when we're finished, take over your government. It will be yours to take. It was an extraordinary appeal that suggested that allies could be seeking to end the country's theocracy after decades of tensions. Netanyahu echoed that sweeping goal, quote, our joint operation will create the conditions for the brave Iranian people to take their fate into their own hands, end quote. according to Bibi. I think Bibi sees the Iranians as not much different than the Gazans, don't you? In a video post on social media, Trump claimed Iran has continued to develop its nuclear program. I thought they knocked all that out back in June, and plans to develop missiles to reach the U.S. So I'm not sure if there's any evidence of that. I doubt it. But the main evidence apparently is just that Israel wants to hit Iran. So that's what they went with. So anyway, there's quite a bit of information on this page. I'm looking to scroll down here, looking to see if there's any additional information. Of course, that was the big news really later in the day yesterday, was that the Ayatollah was eliminated, as House says here, taken out. Says from sources inside Iran, the following Iranian sites were struck by missiles: Ministry of Intelligence, Ministry of Defense, Office of the Supreme Leader, Atomic Energy Organization, the Parchin Complex, and numerous U.S. bases in numerous countries are being targeted by Iran, as in Kuwait, Bahrain, Qatar, and the UAE, confirmed targeted. A second wave of strikes on U.S. and Israeli bases has begun. Iran is using hypersonic Fatah missiles. That was as of 3:30 p.m. That was yesterday. Strait of Hormuz was closed as of 3:50 p.m. Eastern yesterday. So that's a big deal, obviously. Strait of Hormuz being closed could result in some shortages at the pump and other places, impact, economies around the world. Although it could take a little while, but, it depends on how long it's closed. Tel Aviv is getting pounded. Red alerts expanded. One of the impact sites in Tel Aviv said that the Iranian missile had a cluster warhead. So I'm not sure, not really getting a lot of information out of Israel as far as the damage and people hurt or killed there. But it's not all that surprising because any of those, reports that they show will show a failure on their side from their system not being able to take out those missiles that are coming in, apparently. So anyway, that is one of the articles here on House site. I've got several pulled up from there. Just thought we'd take a look at briefly. It says 3 U.S. military members dead, 4 to 5 others critically injured. That's of earlier today. Those numbers could be different. 3 have been confirmed killed. Multiple others are injured in what's described as minor shrapnel injuries. CENTCOM confirmed that 3 are dead, though. No branch of the military yet disclosed. Names not disclosed. So people are dying, no question. Then this one, drone strikes British airbase on Cyprus. 5:21 Eastern U.S. time, just a little while ago. A drone struck the Royal Air Force Air Base in Cyprus, in the Mediterranean. Cyprus is a member of the EU. Britain is a member of NATO. It's the British base, I guess, the Royal Air Force base. So it's Britain's base on Cyprus. Initial word coming out of Europe reports UK, France, and Germany are ready to undertake defensive actions against Iran. In addition, the foreign ministers of Bahrain, Kuwait, Oman, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, and UAE declared that they reserve the right to self-defense under Article 51 of the UN Charter, which includes the possibility of engaging in military actions against Iran. Yeah, and it says, Hal's remark here, funny how wars never stay where you start them, and the unintended consequences begin. So that's the thing. I mean, you'd think they would blame Israel and the U.S. for them getting attacked. So far, I haven't heard that, but doesn't mean they won't. Iran missiles head towards Cyprus in Europe, so there's a little bit more information about the whole Cyprus issue. Talking about, is this, going to be resulting in further escalations toward World War III? It looks like it already is. You have all the other Arab countries being involved, being hit to some degree. So, yeah, we'll see where this goes. I don't think it's good. But we're going to look at a few other things tonight, not just possible World War III or what seems to me inevitable World War III at this point. It's just a question of, is this the starting point? Is this the ignition of all of that? It seems like it probably is, and it makes sense that Israel would start it. Israel with the U.S.'s help. Israel and the U.S. are one and the same, effectively, at this point. All right, let's look at a few of these other articles I've pulled up here. Need to know.news, World Economic Forum CEO Borg Brende or Brend, resigns. Epstein email reveals scheme for global governance. Jeffrey Epstein was first arrested in 2006 in Palm Beach, Florida. In 2008, he pled guilty to child sex crimes. He was arrested again in 2019 on federal child sex trafficking charges. The WEF CEO and president, Borge, B-O-R-G-E, Brende, B-R-E-N-D-E, maybe Brende, who was previously the Norwegian foreign minister, claimed he was unaware of Epstein's crimes. I don't think we buy that, do we? In November, Brend denied having any contact with Epstein, but has since admitted to knowing him after their relationship came to light following the release of the documents by the U.S. Department of Justice. Yeah, that's all just come out recently, as far as his relationship with him. An investigation was triggered by the WEF after it emerged that the two exchanged emails between 2018 and 19 and met for at least 3 so-called business dinners, quote unquote, including at Epstein's New York House of Horrors mansion. An email exchanged from September 2018 between Epstein and Brend shows intent to establish a world government, which makes him the perfect person to have in charge of the World Economic Forum, which now preempts the UN and any other global governance, really, at this point. And who's in charge of the WEF? Who's really at the top there? That would be King Charles III, if you didn't know. All right, and then let's see here. Next article. Norway, former prime minister, this is a different guy, Thorbjørn Jagland, I guess, attempted suicide after Epstein ties were exposed. So some of these British people are really getting themselves into some hot water here. Unlike the Epstein clientele and buddies in the U.S., they don't seem to have any, or not very many of them having much repercussion as far as their relationship with Epstein. Not that surprising, though, is it? Former Prime Minister Jagland, 75, served as Norway's prime minister from 96 to 97 and held other prominent international roles, including Secretary General of the Council of Europe from 2009 to 2019 and chairman of the Norwegian Nobel Committee. Law enforcement raided his properties and reported that his immediate family used Epstein's private apartments in Paris and New York multiple times between 2011 and 18, and stayed at Epstein's villa in Palm Beach, Florida. Epstein also reportedly paid for travel and hotel costs for Jagland and 5 other adults in the Caribbean and reportedly asked Epstein for a loan. Jagland faces up to a decade in prison if convicted. Other Norwegians, including the Crown Princess, have been implicated in the Epstein files. So lots of Norwegians involved here. But this guy apparently attempted suicide. I was looking to see what happened, what he did. He was hospitalized a week ago after a failed suicide attempt after he was charged with gross corruption after the police probe into his ties with Epstein. 75 years old. And he happened to be, he says, Jagland, 75, who gave Barack Obama a Nobel Peace Prize less than 9 months into his presidency, I remember that, was charged on February 12th after police carried out an extensive search of his properties, including apartments in Oslo. So, yeah, he was the guy that gave Obama the Nobel Peace Prize. Literally hung it around his neck, I think. So that is weird. I don't hear Obama having to come out. People aren't screaming for him to come out and denounce the whole Epstein thing. And knowing this guy, seems like there's a little bit of that going around. If you're friends of friends of friends, then you have to come out and denounce what happened and step down from wherever you are. That's not happening with Obama, as far as I know. Anyway, let's see here. The next one on needtoknow.news. Epstein/Rothschild connection is the key to exposing the deep state. Alex Newman, he's a friend of the show. He's a guy that I've met and talked to a few times over just over the internet, but he was a guest on Lost Arts Radio, a show I used to produce for many years, and he was on that show several times as a guest. Alex is a really great guy. Alex Newman highlights the close financial and personal relationship that the infamous Rothschild banking family maintained with Epstein through his recently exposed emails. According to documents released by the Department of Justice, Epstein was paid tens of millions of dollars by Rothschild entities for, quote, the work. In fact, Epstein referred to himself as a representative of the powerful banking dynasty in emails to big tech leaders such as Peter Thiel. In recent testimony, billionaire Les Wexner, an Epstein co-conspirator, according to the FBI, confirmed that too. It says child sex trafficker and deep state operative Epstein was deeply connected to the unfathomably wealthy and powerful Rothschild banking dynasty, perhaps the most important money men for the insiders. Explains the New American magazine Alex Newman in this explosive episode of Behind the Deep State. So that's what's embedded here, I guess. Understanding this connection is critical to unraveling the real story. Here's a screenshot here of Marina Abramovic and Jacob Rothschild posing in front of the painting entitled Satan Summoning His Legions. Yeah. The Rothschilds intermarried inside their family in order to maintain their fortune. Jacob Rothschild died in 2024 at age 87. Anyway, that is on needtoknow.news. Secretary of Commerce Howard Lutnick is accused of lying about Epstein and benefiting from failed tariffs. We've got a video that we'll watch a little bit later on old Mr. Lutnick here, who I personally find to be a monumental sleazeball. It says before becoming the 41st Secretary of Commerce, Howard Lutnick served for over 3 decades as the CEO of Cantor Fitzgerald, a global investment bank that partnered with the WEF, World Economic Forum, a global investment bank that partnered with them and implemented ESG and DEI policies. It was an early player in carbon markets in line with the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, which is also tied in with the WEF. Some of his other shady actions and potential crimes are noted below. Howard Lutnick is accused of lying about his contact with Epstein, who lived next door to him for 21 years and was a business partner. Cantor Fitzgerald placed big put options on the 9/11 airlines before the attacks. And it says Lutnick did not go to work on 9/11, leading some critics to believe that he had advanced warning. Lutnick's company, managed by his sons, stands to make a fortune in the failed tariff plan and more. Yeah, that's been the rumor. Lots of people have been talking about that. I'm not sure if that's actually playing out or not. Depends on what happens with the tariffs, I suppose. If they have to start paying people back, maybe, because of that. But so far, Trump has doubled down on the tariffs, so I don't really see that happening, at least not yet. Anyway, there's quite a bit here on old Mr. Lutnick, who, again, we will look at a video on him in a little bit that's entitled, let me find the title of it just so I can get it right here. The video is entitled, where is it? What is so DAMN funny, Howard? That's what it's called. Anyway, I just wanted to get the title right just because it's something you got to see. So, yes, he's always laughing. He's always behind President Trump, and he's always giggling and laughing. So he's probably demonically possessed or something. That's my guess. I don't know. Thomas Massey says Bayer Monsanto has our country's under siege and that it seeks protection from lawsuits. Thomas Massey would be right. We mentioned this last week. Not the Massey part, but the Bayer and Monsanto part we did as far as what's going on with glyphosate. Bayer acquired Monsanto in 2018 for $66 billion. U.S. Representative Thomas Massey said that our entire country is under siege by Bayer, a German company that spent over $9 million lobbying the executive and legislative/congressional branches in order to gain immunity from lawsuits alleging Roundup Ready herbicide is toxic and causes cancer. He said that the Constitution guarantees people a trial if they have been harmed. He added that Attorney General Pam Bondi and Trump's Chief of Staff Susie Wiles worked for a lobby firm called Ballard Partners that is registered to lobby for Bayer in December 2024. Ballard Partners contributed $50 million to Trump's campaign in 2024. Isn't that nice? Keeping it all in the family. Massey said that Trump's recent executive order declaring that the production of the chemical glyphosate from Bayer is a, quote, national defense priority was issued for the purpose of protecting the company from any liability. The EO contains the false claim that agricultural productivity would suffer without glyphosate. Bayer Monsanto contends that the EPA has reviewed glyphosate for decades and reached the same conclusion again and again, that Roundup does not cause cancer, because all they had to do was cover their eyes and not look at the evidence and say, yep, see, we were right. The company further argued that even if a state jury wants a cancer warning, federal law bars Monsanto from unilaterally adding it. If Monsanto wins on preemption, the impact could be sweeping. Whenever the EPA has approved a pesticide label, it would effectively elevate a federal agency's risk determination above the authority of state courts and juries. So yes, they have basically the same protection Bayer Monsanto does that the VAXX manufacturers got in 1986 under Reagan. So, yep, you can't question it. It is safe and effective. If you ever think otherwise, then you're obviously a conspiracy theorist and don't know what you're talking about. Because glyphosate is clearly safe and effective. They should start using that. That would be funny, actually. If glyphosate, right on the Roundup can or jar or whatever it is, just put safe and effective right on the front. That would be funny. All right, and then RNA crop spray. Should we be worried? We mentioned this last week. Yeah, I think we should be. Tirana Biosciences has developed RNA for agriculture. A company called Tirana Biosciences has developed an RNA platform for agriculture. Here's just a few words from their website. Again, we mentioned this last week, but I think it's worth repeating. It says, it fuses nature's intelligence with machine intelligence to design RNA-based solutions for every aspect of plant health, from seed to stem. Flagship Pioneering, that's the company, put in a $50 million investment into Tirana, noting that Flagship has also helped to launch Moderna. The company is exploring 15 different aspects of their RNA platform, and one is plant vaccines and protective agents. So it says the company is in the early phases of research and not approved for commercial use, I would say, yet. It uses a process called gene silencing. The plant is engineered to produce a protective RNA that changes the DNA. This is a genetic modification, GMO, that is passed on to future generations of that plant to guard against a pest. The second process is spray-on RNA that is similar to a pesticide but without the chemicals. It is meant to only target the pest, but it could have more widespread effects. They just don't know. Anyway, then here's some info from Dr. Sherry Tenpenny on here as well, who's always got good information to impart to people. So that is on needtoknow.news. And then this is just a follow-up. Hadn't really heard anything much about this lately, so I thought I would mention it. Christian faith-based groups helped rebuild North Carolina after Hurricane Helene destruction. Might remember that from a couple years ago now. North Carolina suffered record-breaking floods resulting from Hurricane Helene, a Category 4 hurricane, in September 2024. Under former President Biden, fake President Biden, help from taxpayer-funded FEMA was inadequate. Christian groups, including the Amish, Catholics, Evangelicals, and the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, the Mormons, and other Christian denominations, helped residents in rural areas of North Carolina rebuild their homes and communities. Some Christians donated their labor for more than a year to help the Hurricane Helene victims. So, anyway, it's good that they have a follow-up on here about that. Talking about the criminal, also known as Alejandro Mayorkas, and Homeland Security under Biden and so forth. FEMA was accused of politically discriminating against Americans under Biden, as revealed in an explosive report leading to significant conversations in North Carolina. U.S. Department of Homeland Security's internal probe found that FEMA disaster assistance teams in 2024 bypassed homes displaying signs supporting then presidential candidate Donald Trump, violating the Privacy Act of 1974 and treating individuals unfairly based on political beliefs. Yes, but it was white people, so it's fine. It doesn't matter. Hurricane Helene's impact in North Carolina in 2024 led to over 100 deaths, billions of dollars in damage, and FEMA allocating billions of dollars for debris clearance, public assistance, and individual assistance for survivors. Video showing Christian faith groups helping hurricane victims in North Carolina. Talking about the Amish and some of these other groups that were helping. So rebuilding, they are doing. I think they're still rebuilding in some areas. Anyway, just thought I would mention that just as a follow-up. That article is on needtoknow.news. All right, and then we mentioned the death, apparent death at least, of the Ayatollah in Iran. Khomeini, this is a tweet or a truth post from Donald Trump. Khomeini, one of the most evil people in history, is dead. This is not only justice for the people of Iran, but for all great Americans and those people from many countries throughout the world that have been killed or mutilated by Khomeini and his gang of bloodthirsty thugs. Unlike Israel. I'm just adding that. He was unable to avoid our intelligence and highly sophisticated tracking systems, and working closely with Israel, there was not a thing he or the other leaders that have been killed along with him could do. This is the single greatest chance for the Iranian people to take back their country. We are hearing that many of their IRGC military and other security and police forces no longer want to fight and are looking for immunity from us. As I said last night, now they can have immunity. Later, they can only get death. This is again from the President of Peace, just so you remember. Keep that in mind. Hopefully, the IRGC and the police will peacefully merge with the Iranian patriots and work together as a unit to bring back the country to the greatness it deserves. That process should soon be starting. In that, not only the death of the Ayatollah Khomeini, but the country has been, in only one day, very much destroyed and even obliterated. The heavy and pinpoint bombing, however, will continue uninterrupted throughout the week, or as long as necessary, to achieve our objective of peace throughout the Middle East and indeed the world. So, yes, the President of Peace must start a war and kill thousands and thousands of people in order to have peace. So figure that one out. Anyway, that one is a Truth Social post, and we'll do a little bit more on the war as we go tonight, just sort of in and out on that whole thing, just because there's other things to talk about as well. Trump declares Ayatollah dead, but the X account from the Ayatollah has posted something. So this was actually before it was confirmed that he was dead, and Iran has apparently confirmed that themselves now, so I don't really think there's much question that he is. I think there was a lot of question right at first. And then this is the tweet or Truth Social post that I just read. But this was posted on the Ayatollah's X account, I guess pretty recently, yesterday sometime. It's just a picture. It says, is Khomeini dead or alive? Adding to the mystery, Khomeini's X account has posted something ambiguous just after the Trump statement. Trump has further vowed that the bombing will continue. Yeah, and then there's the, I guess the game. Where's Khomeini? They all look alike at that level because they're all of the same bloodline. They're intermarrying, just like the royals, just like the Rothschilds. They're intermarrying because they have to stay the same bloodline, basically going back to Muhammad. So it's no wonder that they all look the same. So anyway, and even the new guy looks just like this last guy. A little bit younger, maybe. So yeah, that is a Liberty Beacon article. And then this one too, Iran names interim successor to Khomeini under second day of massive bombs. So this is the new guy. His beard is much shorter. Otherwise, he looks the same. Says, questions hang over who will ultimately succeed Iran's slain supreme leader, Ayatollah Khomeini. An interim leader has been appointed to fulfill his duties. Top Shia cleric Arafi has been named to the interim leadership council after Khomeini was confirmed killed by the U.S. and Israel strikes. So this guy is the new guy, much like the old guy, but we don't know if he's going to be staying in that position or not. Of course, they could take him out right away as well. It's hard to say. Anyway, there is a bit more information, quite a bit of video posted on this page too. So that's on the Liberty Beacon. We'll link to all these posts in the Substack posts that I send out on probably Tuesday this week. So if you're not on the email list, make sure that you are so you get that information. Even if you don't, though, there's still a way to get that from the Substack without being on the email list, which is totally fine. So we'll look at that a little bit later. And then a couple articles from technocracy.news. Gaza emerges as the first controlled experiment for technocracy. I thought I would just mention this article just because this one is a full article at the moment, not behind a paywall. I think it will be at some point. It was just posted a few days ago, so it probably won't be available, publicly for very long. It says that the principle at the core of technocracy, articulated by its original architects at Columbia University in the 30s and documented across decades of research, it cuts through all the humanitarian language being applied to Gaza's reconstruction, the replacement of political governance by scientific and technical management wielded by a self-selected expert elite. That was also known as the Epstein class. Technocracy does not announce itself as tyranny and announces itself as efficiency. It arrives bearing clipboards and algorithms and blueprints for a better future. Gaza is not being reconstructed, it's being designed from scratch on cleared land by a management class that has already decided what kind of society it will produce, who will govern it, what currency it will use, and how its residents will be monitored. The 32-slide Project Sunrise blueprint, drafted by Jared Kushner and Steve Witkoff, formally evaluated by the Trump administration in late 2025, poses the quote voluntary relocation of Gaza's 2.3 million residents. Yeah, I wonder how many of them are actually still alive. That's just a little sidebar there. Not very many from what I can tell. And they misreported the death numbers early on, by the way. They've admitted that recently. The demolition of existing urban fabric and the construction of 6 to 8 AI-enhanced smart cities built on cleared land. The plan includes biometric checkpoints, controlling population movement between city zones, a manufacturing hub, and a port economy. This is not aid, it is not development, it is social engineering at a territorial scale, executed by a management class that has assigned itself the authority to decide what 2.3 million lives should look like without their participation in the design. The only thing I think personally, this is, again, a little sidebar, me talking here. The only thing to me that they've sort of, I don't know if this is probably Patrick Wood that wrote this, possibly that he's overlooked here, is that I don't think it'll be the Gazans that move back there, do you? I don't think they're going to be allowed. They're being moved to Somalia. So it will be other people, most likely Jewish citizens, that move in there. It's not going to be 2.3 million Gazans that move back. Number one, there can't possibly be that many left after they've murdered so many of them. Number two, they didn't do that so that they would let them move back into a group of smart cities. They did that so that they can take the land. Again, a little sidebar there. Anyway, this is going into the Board of Peace and the Jared Kushner connection. Jared Kushner's $70 billion reconstruction vision. So once again, the Trump family themselves will be raking in the billions of dollars, most likely because of this, if this ever happens, which I personally am not sure that it ever will. I don't know if there's time for all of this, but that's what they're planning. And I just wanted to mention it just because I feel like this article details things pretty nicely, although I think they're wrong about who's going to actually be living there. Anyway, and then this one as well kind of goes with that. The Gaza Gambit. Trump's USD1 and asset tokens will provide cradle-to-grave financial system. And then here's the picture of what it could look like. Jared Kushner unveiled the ambitious vision Thursday for a cosmopolitan Gaza Strip that will attract investment and tourists after years of war, looking much like his father-in-law, President Trump's call for converting the war-torn Mediterranean territory into a Riviera of the Middle East. And they will be making their billions when that gets designed, if it does. When Trump's Board of Peace quietly began exploring the U.S. dollar-backed stablecoin for post-war Gaza last month, most observers treated it as a humanitarian footnote, a pragmatic digital tool for a cash-starved, infrastructure-depleted territory. Infrastructure depleted. It's like nothing but dust and rocks at this point, and bones. Infrastructure depleted territory of 2.3 million people. They've missed the larger story entirely. So this goes into, I guess, the financial system that could take place of whatever was there before. Again, a Patrick Wood article. This one apparently has already gone behind the paywall, but you can still check out the article by clicking the little listen to this article button on the site if you're interested in that, so you can at least hear it. And in case you missed it, you are here. I found that the other day and thought it was really funny. You are here. You're in the Matrix. Not untrue, is it? Yeah, this one I thought was interesting just because I didn't really see this one coming. I didn't know if this is something that's being talked about. I don't really feel like it is much, but it is kind of funny and I guess not that surprising. CNN staffers are in a panic over Paramount takeover. What's likely in store for cable news giant? Did you know CNN is getting taken over? Couldn't happen to a better news organization. And I'm using that term very loosely. CNN staffers are freaking out after learning that their left-leaning network's owner, Warner Brothers Discovery, will be acquired by Paramount Skydance, even as insiders confirmed that the new owners plan to take a more politically centrist approach to the news. Top talent and low-level producers alike are apoplectic that CNN is being acquired by Paramount Skydance, the mega giant that scooped up CBS last year, which subsequently tapped 41-year-old news hound Barry Weiss, seen below there, to root out liberal bias at the network. Barry Weiss. And I don't think that is a Methodist name, do you? Nope, I don't think it is. Now CNN staffers are so panicked that the network's president, Mark Thompson, was forced to send out a memo late Thursday to tamp down anxiety. The merger still requires a green light from Trump's Department of Justice, among other regulatory approvals. Here's Barry Weiss, says kind of what I just read. Despite all the speculation you've read during this process, this is from the president. Despite all the speculation you've read during this process, I would suggest that you don't jump to conclusions about the future until we know more. Thompson wrote late Thursday after it became clear that PSKY emerged victorious over Netflix. So, again, looking back at PSKY is Paramount Skydance. So they bought Netflix as well, or they merged, I guess, with them. Maybe Netflix bought them actually. And secondly, it's not to forget our duty to our audience. We're still near the start of what is already an incredibly newsy year at home and abroad, one that will culminate in the critical U.S. midterm elections and who knows what, Thompson added. So kind of funny. Looks like CNN's getting bought. So yeah, Paramount Skydance. It would be interesting to see if they indeed do move more to the center. I don't know. I just can't imagine it, but maybe they will. Bigger problem for Thompson and his troops for anchors like Caitlin Collins, Jake Tapper, and Anderson Cooper right down the line to the rank and file is the likelihood of cost-cutting. Even here, the fears of imminent Armageddon might be overblown, insiders say. CNN is known for its low ratings compared to Fox and even MS Now, which I think is MSNBC. But it still makes money. This year's adjusted operated profit is projected at $600 million on revenue of $1.8 billion. How are they making money? I thought it was just being granted to them, like from our tax dollars and other places. Anyway, says more good news. Paramount is looking to merge it with CBS News Division, the thing that Barry Weiss runs. A reckoning is unfolding. Vanguard and BlackRock just got smacked in the face with the legal shovel. Well, I like the sound of that, don't you? Non-violently, of course. For years now, the corporate and political left has been obsessed with tidy three little marketing buzzwords that promise compassion and fairness, but somehow always deliver the exact opposite. First, it was DEI. We all know about that, right? Well, now it's ESG. If you're like most Americans, you've heard plenty about DEI. ESG, not so much. This is the quieter, lesser-known cousin. There's been very little straight talk about what it actually means and why it matters and how it relates to DEI, but as with all things, quote, progressive, the confusion is the point. The more complicated these systems sound, the easier they are to slip into everyday life without the public even noticing. So let's break into this ESG thing and break it down simply. ESG stands for environmental, social, and governance. On paper, this three-letter nightmare is sold as a neutral investing system that helps big asset managers evaluate risk and force responsible corporate behavior. Responsible is in quotes. But as with all things woke, the reality is very different. In the real world, ESG has become something. It's a power weapon that allows these giant firms to pressure businesses into adopting a wide range of left-wing political and cultural ideologies. Sounds familiar, right? This is where ESG and DEI start to exist in the same orbit. But keep in mind, they're not identical. DEI operates mostly inside institutions through hiring, promotions, and workplace policy. But ESG works from the outside by using shareholder power and investment pressure to steer corporate behavior. But you can see how the two work hand in hand. The end result is the same. Companies are forced and financially pressured to adopt progressive policies. So that's exactly why this latest story matters, because after years of hardcore pushing and pulling, this made ESG seem unstoppable. The walls are finally closing in. Vanguard, one of the so-called Big Three asset managers, has now bent the knee. They've agreed to settle with a coalition of right-wing state attorneys general and scale back a lot of their ESG activism. This might sound dry and boring, but actually it's a huge victory for the right and a long overdue course correction. So in short, one of the biggest power players in the ESG world just blinked. And that's why this moment is getting so much attention. The news came right after Vanguard reached a settlement with the Republican state attorneys general who were investigating their coordinated ESG activity. Vanguard knew that they were boxed in, and instead of fighting for the woke agenda, they backed down. This is a major step toward reining in the politically driven market pressure, and while Vanguard bent the first knee, others will have to follow, including BlackRock. So that is good news, I think. Here's Larry the Fink here, who heads up BlackRock. The political and legal pushback against these charity-driven left-wing agendas isn't fringe. It's a major shift. Americans want a return to excellence. For years, these large, massive asset managers operated freely and expanded ESG systems across corporate America. Now, with these state-level challenges, lawsuits are starting to force a reckoning that many on the right have been waiting for. And if this fight feels familiar, it should. It says because Revolver readers have already watched a very similar battle play out in the DEI arena. Revolver's this website we're looking at. Long before DEI became a household term, Revolver was talking about these so-called equity systems and how they were reshaping hiring, admissions, and institutional power structures across the country and destroying them in the process. One of the most battered and bruised institutions has been our colleges and universities. They went from esteemed educational fortresses to charity-driven clown shows. So, amen to that. Anyway, there's a little bit more here on this article. Thought I would give you a little bit of good news. It seems like it's good news to me. I mean, although it's hard to say if it's just the beginnings of it. I guess it could stop. But good news to see the Vanguard, at least, is bending the knee a little bit here, as they were saying. All right, and then this one from Headline USA. Iran closes the Strait of Hormuz. Iran has been targeting Arab countries along the Persian Gulf, including Bahrain, Kuwait, Qatar, and the UAE. Yeah, they've been targeting them because they are now being attacked. So it doesn't really surprise me, does it you? One of the major global maritime passageways for oil transport, the Strait of Hormuz, has been closed. Yeah, I was looking to see what they did to close it. I mean, I know they can sink ships, but I don't know that that's what happened. Strait of Hormuz, which connects the Persian Gulf and the Gulf of Oman, has reportedly been receiving VHF transmissions from the Iranian Revolutionary Guard instructing that no ships are allowed to pass through the strait. The reports come as the U.S. Department of Transportation and Maritime Administration has issued an alert to vessels in the region, urging them to keep clear of the area if possible. Yeah, you'll probably get sunk if you try to cross. Any U.S. flagged, owned, or crewed commercial vessels that are operating in these areas should maintain a standoff of 30 nautical miles. So there you go. Iran has been targeting Arab countries along the Persian Gulf, including Bahrain, Kuwait, Qatar, and UAE, in response to U.S., I would add, and Israel strikes inside of Iran early Saturday. The reported closure comes on the heels of Operation Epic Fury, joint coordinated strikes by the U.S. and Israel on Iran. Yeah, Operation Epic Fury. I think we could call it Operation Epic Fail, personally. But it doesn't really say here how they closed it. I guess they're just maybe threatening to sink ships that enter those waters. I don't really know. I know one thing they could do is more or less permanently close it by sinking older ships there, scuttling ships there, but I'm not sure that's what happened. I don't really see that, at least not in that article. All right, and then we've got Headline USA article again here. Report. Oh yeah, this happened. I guess over the night last night. Report: Austin mass shooter wore a Property of Allah shirt. It says wore Property of Allah clothing, an Iranian flag emblem. Yeah. So did you know about this? So people are worried that this is one of these terror cells. From what I could tell, it was a single guy, just one person, not a group of guys shooting. It says the FBI is investigating whether the shooting early Sunday was an act of terrorism. I heard earlier today, right before coming on air tonight, actually, that it indeed was an act of terrorism, and that this guy was distraught because it's this guy, Property of Allah. He was distraught because of the killing of the Ayatollah, and this guy is from Senegal. The gunman who killed 2 people at a bar in Texas, I think it might be 3 now, who passed away early Sunday in a mass shooting that left 14 others wounded, was wearing a T-shirt that said Property of Allah and another shirt with an Iranian flag design. I guess he's got a T-shirt on under that, and it had the Iranian flag design on there. The shooter has been identified as 53-year-old, doesn't really matter, a law enforcement official, and another person familiar with the matter reportedly said. He was originally from Senegal, according to multiple people briefed on the investigation. One of the people reportedly said that he came to the U.S. in 2006 and was a naturalized U.S. citizen. Officers in Austin shot and killed the gunman, who used both a pistol and a rifle to carry out the attack. So I did hear that, surprisingly, the Austin PD was pretty quick on the scene there, which was a little surprising for me. I've never been to Austin, but I've heard bad things about the police department and taking their time and turning away help oftentimes. Not quite as bad maybe as Minneapolis, but along those lines. But I guess they were pretty quick to get there, so that's good. The suspect drove past the bar several times before stopping and shooting a pistol out the window of his SUV at the people on the patio in front of the bar. The gunman then parked the vehicle, got out with a rifle, and began shooting at people walking in the area before officers who rushed to the intersection shot him. So I'm not even certain everybody who got shot was even in the bar. Doesn't sound like it. There have been at least 2 other high-profile shootings in Austin's 6th Street Entertainment District within the past 5 years, including one in the summer of 2021 that left 14 people wounded. Although this weekend's shooting doesn't meet the definition of a mass killing, I'm not sure what that would be exactly. There have been 5 of those so far this year. 5. This year. And they're only having March. So, wow, that's quite a bit. Anyway, a little bit more information here on this, but they got him, I guess. But that's possibly step 1. I mean, there might be others now that the old Ayatollah is no longer around, and Iran will continue to get bombed. Trump launches war with Iran for Israel, says U.S. service members may die, but it's a risk he's willing to take. So I'm just adding that, but it seems like it. Let's see. I'm looking to see if there's any new information here. I'm not sure there is. This is on Information Liberation. It's a good site. Yeah. Let's see. The lives of courageous American heroes may be lost, and we may have casualties that often happens in war, but we're doing this not for now. We're doing this for the future, and it's a noble mission, he says. Yes, murder is a noble mission. Regime change, which isn't actually about regime change, is a noble mission. Yeah, I don't think it's about regime change in Iran at all. That's what people are saying that it's about. Nope. Israel just wants the land. So I think that's what it's about mostly. The Greater Israel Project. So, and then it says, I'm so glad I didn't vote for this. Israel first traitor to America. And this person that wrote this article, Chris Menahan, says, he literally ran on handing our country over to the Israel lobby, and now he's made good on his promise after abandoning his pledge to conduct mass deportations, defend free speech, and not launch any new wars. Well, you can't really argue with that. It's pretty much true. I don't know that he really ran on handing over the country to the Israeli lobby. If he'd have done that, I certainly would not have voted for him. He ran on a lot of stuff that he didn't end up pursuing. At least he hasn't to this point. Don't know that he will. I'm not holding my breath. Let's put it that way. But yeah, in fact, he's going against a lot of what he has said. But yeah, the point is not missed here. The Jewish lobby's window of opportunity to have the U.S. go to war with Iran was closing, with the American public turning against Israel, and this is Trump's parting gift to his Zionist masters. So this is an interesting chart. I saw this the other day. Americans' sympathies in the Middle East situation. You see here by year how the sympathies are pretty much running equal between the Israelis here in green and the Palestinians here in blue until starting about 2002, until you get out to 2026 where they start to cross. And you can see here that the sympathy for the Palestinians is actually surpassing the Israelis now starting this year. 41 to 36 here percent. So I don't think that's something that can be ignored, and I don't think it's going to be reversing anytime soon. Not that I'm supporting Hamas. I'm not. I'm just saying it's interesting to see that the lines have crossed on that chart. You know, and there are a lot of Palestinian Christians who are being harmed here. And I heard somebody talking the other day about, because he had an organization that was going over there and helping the Palestinians and the Christians in particular, and he was talking about how many of those Christians that are in that area, that their families have been there for at least 2,000 years, and he said some of them are descendants from the same people who were in the upper room with Jesus. So I thought that was pretty interesting, very interesting. So yeah, and of course Israel wants to wipe them out. So it sounds about right, doesn't it? So another Information Liberation article, CNN, timing of Iran attack bears symbolic meaning in Judaism. The timing of the U.S.-Israel attack on Iran bears symbolic meaning in Judaism as Jews preparing for Purim are reciting commandments to wipe out Amalek. CNN is reporting. Yeah, it always comes back to Amalek. Timing of U.S.-Israel attack on Iran bears symbolic meaning. Ahead of the upcoming Jewish holiday of Purim, worshippers read the specific portion from the Old Testament known as Zachor. The passage from the book of Deuteronomy commands the ancient Israelites to, which they're not actually descendants from, they just think they are, the ancient Israelites to remember an unprovoked attack by the nation of Amalek and to eradicate the memory of Amalek once the Israelites are settled in their land. Yeah, it's talking about wiping out them and their entire families. So, a type of group guilt, I guess. Everybody's guilty if one person is. The passage from the book of Deuteronomy commands ancient Israelites to remember an unprovoked attack by the nation of Amalek and to eradicate the memory of Amalek once the Israelites settle into their land. The passage is read publicly before Purim to fulfill the mitzvah of remembering Amalek as Israel's archetypical enemy. And I've heard Bibi mention that scripture oftentimes. That's the only time, about the only scripture he will mention is that with Amalek. Other than, if you bless Israel, you'll be blessed. If you curse Israel, you'll be cursed. He mentions that too, but that's about it. That's as deep as he gets. Anyway. Yeah, there's a little bit more here on information liberation. Got several articles from RT, so just several news headlines I wanted to pull up and take a look at. Trump vows to bomb Iran until all objectives achieved. So, I'm looking to see if that video is on here. There's a video I saw earlier. I don't think it is. Maybe we'll come across it. It was pretty wild, of a missile hitting in Tel Aviv. It was crazy. Well, this is it here, actually. We don't have the sound pumped into the live stream here where you can hear it, but it's pretty wild. It says Trump vows to bomb Iran until all objectives are achieved. A combined missile attack on a diplomatic compound killed Iranian Supreme Leader Khamenei, triggering a wave of retaliatory strikes across the region. Massive, unprovoked U.S.-Israeli strikes against Iran began on Saturday morning and have continued for a second night. Combat operations continue at this time in full force and will continue until all of our objectives are achieved, he said. British Prime Minister Keir Starmer said that while the UK was not involved in the initial strikes on Iran, it has agreed to a U.S. request to use British bases for defensive raids to destroy Iranian missiles at source, quote unquote. So that is talking about, we mentioned it a little while ago, that's, one of those air bases, Royal Air Force Base in Cyprus, that was already being attacked. And that's because they're helping. So yeah, and then let's see. Some other videos embedded in this article. Some of the missile hits, I guess. Several explosions have been reported in central Iranian cities in these different cities that are being hit there. Yeah, so several other videos embedded here. It's worth a look. And then another RT article here. Iran confirms that Khamenei is dead. Ayatollah has been martyred. Several of these I pulled up just because I thought we would just look at them quickly. I don't really see anything new on that one. And here's another. Trump bit off more than he can chew with Iran, ex-Pentagon analyst says. U.S. is doing Israel's bidding with strikes on Iran that are unlikely to trigger regime change. This guy, Michael Malouf, has told RT. Unlikely to trigger regime change and risk escalating into a wider geopolitical confrontation. Former Pentagon security policy analyst Michael Malouf has said. Washington and West Jerusalem launched what they described as a, quote, preemptive attack on the Islamic Republic after nuclear talks failed to produce a breakthrough, prompting retaliation from Iran. Tehran responded with missile and drone strikes targeting Israel and U.S. military bases across the region. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see how much they'll be able to do. I know they have the technology, but I'm not sure if they have the ability to strike back if the Americans are constantly smashing them. I don't have any idea exactly on that, so we'll probably have to wait and see. Then there's this one. Israeli strike on Iranian school kills over 100 children. Tehran has vowed retaliation for the savage attack by Israeli and U.S. aggressors. So some articles were blaming the Americans 100%. This one is saying that it's, and it really is probably both, U.S. and Israel, although I don't know who launched the missile. Over 100 students have been killed and dozens injured. 100 students. Dozens injured in an Israeli airstrike on a girls' primary school in the city of Minab in southern Iran. So how could that happen? I mean, is that being done on purpose, do you suppose? I mean, if it was truly the Israelis that fired the missile, I would say there's a really good chance that it was done on purpose. This seems like the kind of thing that they do in Gaza as well. If it was the Americans, I don't know. I would be less inclined to think it was on purpose, but who knows? It does appear to be legit as far as what I've seen on these videos. And the fact that it did hit all of these kids. So, who were in school because they thought, not the kids, but the schools thought that there was going to be something worked out diplomatically, but no. And then this one, Bill Clinton grilled over evidence of Epstein ties. So this just happened a few days ago. Hillary and Bill on different days. The former U.S. president's close relationship with the convicted sex offender is under examination. So yeah, none of that video has come out yet. That was all videoed, and they have to do whatever they need to finalize those videos. They did mention, Comer, the guy that was heading this up, mentioned that those videos will be forthcoming 24 to 48 hours. So my guess is early in the week, we'll be able to see these depositions from not only Bill, but also Hillary, which I think will both be really interesting. Apparently, Bill just basically denied everything. And Hillary just said, essentially, I don't know, you'll have to ask my husband. So I think it's pretty much just a runaround, which is what the Clintons are good at. But it will be interesting to see it firsthand, the actual recording. So that's coming. That's something that we'll be able to examine probably at least a little bit on the next show. But those videos are not out yet. So at least not that I'm aware of. So I wanted to mention that for tonight. And then this one too, lawmakers grill former President Clinton over Epstein ties. So a little closer look here. It says Clinton testified privately before the House Oversight Committee on Friday about his relationship with Epstein. And then Hillary delivered closed-door testimony before the bipartisan committee on Thursday. So she was the day before. Former president released his prepared opening remarks in a Friday morning statement, minimizing his documented relationship with Epstein during his brief acquaintance with Epstein. They were like best buddies. I think he was more like number 2 in the organization, it sounded like. The former president never saw anything or did anything wrong, according to him. According to his prepared remarks, he cited his experience growing up in a house with domestic abuse and insisted he would never have flown on Epstein's plane if he had even an inkling of his crimes. So Bill was an innocent bystander, as clean and pure as the wind-driven snow. We're supposed to believe this. The guy who had the, let's just say, stained blue dress on in a portrait in Epstein's house. Well, in the Epstein Island building. Yeah. So, yeah, it was just total coincidence. The former president insisted that regardless of how many decades old photos he appeared in, he still had no idea about the crimes Epstein was committing. Yeah, sure. Even with hindsight, he said he never saw anything that gave him pause, and that he ended his association with Epstein long before the 2008 guilty plea. He refused to say anything he wasn't 100% certain of and warned politicians to expect many answers of, "I don't recall." So, apparently he didn't try and redefine the meaning of the word "is," but it's basically at that level. Former president also took issue with the committee's calling his wife for testimony, insisting she had no memory of ever meeting Epstein. She neither traveled with him nor visited any of his properties, so subpoenaing her was simply not right, he said. Yes, but Ghislaine Maxwell was literally at their daughter's wedding. So I guess she didn't really know who he was. Is that right? How did Hillary's testimony go? It says the former First Lady repeatedly denied under oath ever meeting Epstein. There's literally pictures of them together. While the committee presented various pieces of evidence suggesting otherwise, House Oversight Committee Chair Rep. James Comer said in a Thursday interview that she repeatedly stated she had no relationship with Epstein and described him as a con artist. Hillary also deferred at least a dozen questions to her husband, so the former president's deposition was expected to last longer than hers. No one's accusing anyone of wrongdoing. Americans just want transparency and for people to be held accountable, he said. Comer said. Yeah, that would be nice. We're not going to see it in this lifetime, I don't think. Anyway, that is on WNG.org. It's on the SIFT. And then one more from that site, another one that I found that's completely different idea. I thought it was interesting because we know, according to Scripture, that we will see changes in the sky, be signs in the skies. Lunar eclipse to trigger a blood moon on Tuesday. So this week coming up. Sky gazers may see a blood moon during a total lunar eclipse slated for early Tuesday morning, according to NASA. Never a straight answer. The Earth will pass between the sun and the moon and cast a large shadow across the moon's surface, making the moon appear reddish-orange. And listen to this one. This is perhaps the most interesting, I think, sentence of the whole article. Scientists expect the next lunar eclipse on New Year's Eve of 2028. You guys know what I think about 2028. How about that? The next lunar eclipse will be rolling into the year 2028. What do you suppose that means? Signs in the heavens. That's pretty wild. If 2028 is the year that I think it will be, that is very significant. It might be a lunar eclipse on New Year's Eve going into 2028. It says the one coming up here will begin around 3:45 a.m. Eastern time and hit totality from about 6 a.m. to 7 a.m. Eastern. So that is on, I think, March 3rd. Looking to see, it doesn't say. It actually doesn't say what day it is, but I'm pretty sure it's the 3rd. Let me see here. Let me look at the calendar. Well, Tuesday. Yeah, Tuesday the 3rd. Yeah, Tuesday morning the 3rd. So early Tuesday morning. So there you go. It's pretty cool. And just for fun here, I looked up kind of an interesting question that I thought of after I read that article. What were the significance of blood moons and the starts or any connection to wars? And this is what the old Goog kicked back here. Blood moons, particularly when appearing as a tetrad, 4 consecutive total lunar eclipses, have historically been linked by some to significant, often violent events in Jewish history, such as the Spanish Inquisition, 1492, the birth of Israel, 1948, and the Six-Day War in 1967. So how about that? So blood moon, birth of Israel, 1948. These events, frequently interpreted through a biblical lens, are seen as markers of impending conflict, though skeptics note the astronomical dates do not always perfectly align with the start of conflicts. Well, I'm not really saying that, but I do think it's interesting. We will see signs in the heavens. So this one that's coming up this week could be an important sign. So just something to keep an eye on. I didn't know about this until a little bit earlier today, so I thought I would relate that information to you guys in case you wanted to investigate it further. But pretty wild, huh? Hacked. Millions of Epstein files were wiped. Heard this earlier in the week, so this is just absolutely insane. A sworn declaration buried in the Trump administration's recent release of millions of Epstein file documents reveals that an FBI computer system hack resulted in the destruction of roughly 100 terabytes of Epstein-related data. A September 2024 declaration from FBI agent Aaron Spivak states that a massive breach of the FBI's New York field office systems on Super Bowl Sunday 2023 led to the Bureau losing access to approximately 500 terabytes of data. 100 terabytes of this data could not be recovered and was permanently erased. So they lost access to 500 terabytes, and of that 500, 100 of it could not be recovered and was permanently erased. How about that? And for it to be that much, that many terabytes is coming from a computer and technical standpoint, which I have a background in, that's mostly going to be video, I'm pretty sure. Video and pictures, if it's that much. So that had to be pretty much video and pictures that were digitized. This document had reportedly received little public attention until it was highlighted by an independent journalist. 500 terabytes of data was gone, quote unquote. Spivak worked for more than a decade in the FBI's domestic terrorism and child exploitation squads, including the Violent Crimes Against Children unit. He described discovering the intrusion the day after it occurred. According to his sworn testimony, when he logged into his work computer, he noticed it had been restarted and saw a text file indicating part of his network had been compromised, along with an email address to contact. Weird. After running antivirus software, Spivak learned it identified one potential threat, but his administrative privileges had already been removed. He was later told that the threat may have been a booby trap left by the hacker. Soon after, Spivak and the IT staff realized their main server was down and that other servers were malfunctioning. As they combed through log files, they noticed strange IP activity originating from 2 IP addresses. I wonder where those were. I'm only going to guess where the IP addresses came from. Israel? Let's look. The activity included combing through certain files pertaining to the Epstein investigation. Let me see here. Around 3:30 p.m. or so, we located the log files and began combing through, which we noticed some strange IP activity that took place yesterday from 2 IP addresses. The activity included combing through certain files pertaining to the Epstein investigation. I reached out to one of the case agents to see if they were in the office yesterday, thinking that maybe they inadvertently changed the setting on the NAS, N-A-S, that means Network Attached Storage, or that's just an internal server, essentially, on the premises there, or if they noticed anything strange about them. He later testified that 500 terabytes of data was gone as a result of the intrusion, though he said he was able to recover about 400 terabytes of that data. That's still an amazing amount. See, it had been reported really leading up to the last few days when this story came out that the total amount that the Epstein files was taking up, if you want to call it that, the total amount of storage was around 14 terabytes. Now this is saying 500 terabytes and 100 terabytes is gone. Anyway, a little bit more information here on this story. So they were able to recover some of it. The situation was, in essence, entrapment. We were being required by policy to create derivative evidence, but we were not being provided the ability to comply. Despite repeated acknowledgments from FBI headquarters about the conundrum, solutions were never provided. We were told to adapt and to figure things out, and we did. The result is that we got punished for it, which is quite insane. We should not be held accountable for a problem we could not fix, and we're not responsible for fixing. Pattern of missing Epstein evidence. The revelation adds to the long-standing concerns about the handling of Epstein-related evidence. Yeah. So that's the interesting thing about that story, I think, was that there was just so much of it. They were able to recover some, but not all. 100 terabytes. I can't even really imagine how much video that is, let alone 500. Total insanity. All right, and then this one from Slay News. 100-year-old Christian church completely destroyed by massive fire in London. Let me guess. Who do you suppose did it? A massive fire tore through the historic King's Hall Methodist Church in Southall, West London, reducing the more than 100-year-old building to rubble. 10 fire engines and dozens of firefighters responded to the scene around 9:30 p.m., battling the blaze for hours. Footage showed flames shooting through the stained glass windows and thick smoke pouring into the night sky as onlookers gathered nearby. The church, which had stood since the early 1900s, survived 2 world wars and more than a century of British history, only to be devastated in a single night. Authorities have not yet announced a cause, and investigations underway. Here's the video. Another church fire, not an isolated incident. No, that's the truth right there. Another church fire. So they're set on purpose, and that is called cultural enrichment. That's what that is. They will find, most likely, if they do actually investigate this and hold anyone accountable, they will find some of the illegals, some of the migrants who have now become citizens, effectively British citizens, somebody who started the fire, is my guess. So let's just say it was probably started by a person who is involved in a religion that is rather violent. I'm just guessing. I don't actually know that, but it is a pretty good educated guess, because many of these other fires have been started by the same group of people. So anyways, it says nobody was hurt, so that's good, but totally burned up the more than 100-year-old Christian church in London. Very sad. Got another church story coming up here. I don't have it next, but it's coming up, and it's sort of a weird one I wanted to mention as well. All right, and then there's this one from Slay News. Lamborghini scraps electric vehicle plans. Warns EV demand is now close to zero. So if you were going to buy that Lamborghini EV, you had that on your list of things to do, you might not be able to get it for very long. It says major U.S. and European automakers are sharply scaling back EV ambitions as consumer demand collapses, reversing once aggressive roadmaps toward full electrification. The latest company to pull the plug is Lamborghini. Could you imagine how expensive a all-electric Lamborghini might cost? Good grief. I wonder if it says. Supercar executive cited weak demand and lack of enthusiasm from its core customer base. No, they want that hum of the engine. That's why they buy them, in part. Plus just the way they look. Instead of moving forward with a fully electric model, the company will replace the Lanzador with a plug-in hybrid. He also stated that Lamborghini intends to continue producing gas-powered internal combustion engines for as long as possible, because they know that is what sells. That's what people want. I was looking to see if there was any prices here on what it might cost. Surely there is. I don't know. I don't see it. It's talking about some of these other car companies and EVs as well. Anyway, so there you go. Hate to disappoint you out there. I'm sure many of you wanted to buy a all-electric Lamborghini, but you might not be able to for very much longer. I found very interesting. Look at this. Go get one. An Israeli rabbi suggested that Israel should bomb the Al-Aqsa Mosque. All right. They should bomb it themselves with an Iranian missile and blame it on Iran, and then incite Arab countries to go to war with Iran. They would also build their third temple as a result of this. Their arrogance will ultimately lead to their downfall. So here is a video here of this rabbi talking about exactly that. So something to watch out for. I'm not saying it'll happen, but I guess it could. So once again, Israel should bomb Al-Aqsa, the mosque, sitting on top of the Temple Mount, with an Iranian missile, blame it on Iran, and then incite Arab countries to go to war with Iran. They would also build their third temple as a result of this. Not the way I would see it personally play out, but I guess it could. I've always said, really, going back years, that they're going to want to take out the mosque and the other buildings there on Temple Mount, but they're going to want to make it look like either something like an earthquake, where they can say it was God's will that they have to now build the temple because it knocked down the mosque and so forth. Or that's kind of the way I was leaning. Or it could be somebody that blows it up or hits it with a missile or bomb or something. And that's kind of an obvious thing. Although I think if they hit it with a missile or a bomb or something, I don't know. It would have to be the right thing in the right place. Otherwise, they risk destroying much of the actual site itself. The actual area, not just the buildings, but the actual Temple Mount. I think they would risk destroying that too. So it's interesting, and people are now calling for that. That's what's wild. They definitely want their third temple. I think they will get one pretty soon. Don't know when. All right, and then this one from SGT Report. A new front in the gun debate. Home inspections proposed in Minnesota. Home inspections. Minnesota House Bill HF 3433 proposes a ban on the possession and transfer of a wide range of semi-automatic firearms. Except the criminals, they can keep theirs. Current owners of soon-to-be prohibited firearms could retain them by only by obtaining a new law enforcement issued certificate of ownership, quote unquote. Wouldn't they have that already? The certificate would require owners to store the firearms according to state-mandated rules and agree to law enforcement inspections of that storage. The bill defines banned weapons by specific models and by a broad set of common features affecting many popular firearms. The proposal has advanced to a House committee with a potential effective date of January 1, 2027, if it's passed into law. How about that? If it says in a move that has ignited fierce debate over constitutional rights and government overreach, Democrat lawmakers in Minnesota are advancing legislation that would not only ban a broad category of semi-automatic firearms, but also condition continued ownership of currently legal guns on allowing law enforcement to inspect their storage inside private homes. The bill, HF 3433, represents one of the most aggressive state-level firearm proposals in recent years, directly challenging traditional interpretations of the Second and Fourth Amendments. How about that? That's what they're trying in Minnesota. The communist state of Minnesota. Total craziness. All right, this one. Mysterious death of Professor Francis Boyle. A bioweapons whistleblower's final warning. The man who wrote the U.S. Bioweapons Act claimed the CV-19 jabbies were military-grade bioweapons, and then he was found dead. Yeah, we had Dr. Boyle on Lost Search Radio one time. It was kind of neat to be able to meet him and talk to him over the internet. And then I think that interview is still available in maybe one or two places. I don't think it's on YouTube anymore, but I can try and find that and put a link to that in the Substack post I send out. So I'll try and find that and do that. It was a really good short interview I remember from years ago. Just days after Professor Francis Boyle agreed to testify against Bill Gates and Albert Bourla regarding the deadly CV-19 jabbies, he was found dead. Boyle, the author of the U.S. Bioweapons Act, had called the mRNA jabbies bioweapons and Frankenshots. But where does the Pentagon fit into all this? In a resurfaced interview that will leave you speechless, Professor Boyle, who literally wrote the 1989 Biological Weapons Anti-Terrorism Act, yes, he did, he was a brilliant guy, stated that both SARS-CoV-2 and the mRNA jabbies were DARPA-funded offensive bioweapons programs from the outset. According to Boyle, the gain-of-function narrative was just a cover story. The true aim was always to develop lethal yet vaccinatable population reduction technology. He named key figures involved, including the UNC Wuhan Fauci, Daszak, and Ralph Barrick. Boyle went further, labeling the shots, quote, synthetic biological weapons of mass destruction, end quote, citing their potential to cause autoimmune damage, prion-like misfolding, and rapid cancers, which is what we're seeing now. We're still seeing people dropping dead from instant stage 4 cancer. Just total craziness. He filed lawsuits, appealed to Congress, and warned the public, but just 20 days after agreeing to testify for the prosecution, he was found dead. This tragic turn of events follows a pattern observed with numerous doctors and whistleblowers since 2020. Is it simply coincidence? Question mark. I don't think so. If a man who literally drafted the law defining bioweapons says we have just witnessed the largest biowarfare attack in history, why isn't every major news outlet covering this? Oh, gee, I know. That would be because they were making tons of money promoting the VAXXs. The most chilling aspect, question mark, Boyle had already predicted the exact outcomes we are witnessing now: myocarditis, strokes, infertility, and the explosion of cancers among the VAXXed. He explained that the spike protein itself was the weapon, and that the lipid nanoparticles were engineered to cross the blood-brain barrier. This was no accident. It was a military-grade kill vector disguised as public health. Yeah, anyway, that's true. I think Dr. Boyle knew exactly what he was talking about, don't you? So this goes on. It's pretty long. That's on medium.com. Rightfully so, I suppose. Medium. All right, here's a Gateway Pundit article. Comer House Oversight Committee members say Hillary repeatedly deferred to her husband, screamed, and was unhinged during the Epstein deposition. So that'll be interesting. You know, she was out there really promoting that they wanted these depositions between her and Bill to be public. So it'll be interesting to see the videos when they come out if this is really what happened. House Oversight Committee members on Friday said Hillary was totally out of control during her deposition, during remarks to reporters ahead of Bill's testimony on Friday. Comer said Hillary deferred to her husband more than 10 times. When asked questions related to Epstein and Maxwell, Hillary deferred to her husband nearly a dozen times. Today, former President Clinton is sitting down in the House Oversight Committee and answering questions under oath, Comer added. Congresswoman Nancy Mace and said Hillary was screaming and unhinged during her testimony on Epstein, and the transcript will prove it. So that will be interesting. I don't think old Bill was... They said Bill was a Southern gentleman and was very likable, is what I heard him say about him. But she is very much the total opposite of that, if you know what I mean. In this picture, she went ballistic, I think, in part because this photo was taken of her by Rep. Lauren Boebert. She snapped this photo and sent it to Benny Johnson, and he posted it on his social media account, which reaches millions and millions of people. So it says, breaking the first image of Hillary testifying under oath about Epstein to the Republican Oversight Committee. This is the first time Hillary has had to answer real questions about Epstein. I don't think she did, do you? Clinton does not look too happy. Anyway, she really blew up apparently after that photo was leaked. So pretty funny. I like seeing him squirm, although I'm a realist knowing that nothing's going to come of it. It is the Republicans we're talking about. They're not going to go after her. She's threatened before to take down half of Washington with her if stuff comes out. So I tend to believe her. All right. How about this? Scientists confirm, like we need scientists to confirm. We already know. Scientists confirm biblical earthquake that shook the earth at the moment of Jesus' crucifixion. So we need the Daily Mail to tell us that this happened. I've literally made videos on this whole thing. Maybe the article's here somewhere. No? I guess not. So that's all they have. Oh, subscribe to continue reading. Okay, well, anyway, we can read the headline. I'm not subscribed. All we get is a bunch of ads. That's too bad. I wanted to see what it said. Oh, well, we know it's true, don't we? Scientists confirm, it does say M+, so you have to be a paid, subscriber here. Daily Mail. Scientists confirm biblical earthquake that shook the earth at the moment of Jesus' crucifixion. That plays right into the whole Ron Wyatt story. We talked about that many, many times, even on this show, but certainly in End Times Dates, the series that I made going back starting in 2019. Episode 4 in particular is a really good one, I think, probably my favorite, talking about how, when the earth cracked open there and the blood that ran down Jesus' side, the blood and water that ran down after the centurion pierced our Lord, and all the blood and the water came gushing out and down through that crack and down through the cross hole 20 feet down directly onto the mercy seat on top of the Ark of the Covenant. So it's an amazing, amazing story by Ron Wyatt. So that particular article doesn't work, but let's go to ronwyatt.com. Let's see if I can... Oh, they've changed the site up a little here. See if I can find that particular story here. Ark of the Covenant. So we'll link to this in the Substack post for you guys who aren't familiar with the story, but it is really, really amazing. Talking about how the Ark had been discovered. It is there. Ron Wyatt himself found it back in 1982 or so. And he proved that it was not only human blood, but the Savior's blood, Jesus' blood, through multiple lab analyzing of the dried blood that was found on the scene. So, to me, it's all provable, and it's an amazing story. And courtesy of Ron Wyatt, I think really good stuff. Anyway, I'm sort of disappointed that we couldn't see the Daily Mail article, but apparently it's subscription only, so my apologies on that. But it does bring up a really good point. You can basically just read about what we already know if you want on Ron's site. And I'll put a link to part 4 of End Times Dates on there too, where we go into that in great depth. And this one is also Daily Mail. All U.S. service members warned about active threat against phones as Uber and Snapchat are considered compromised. Weird. All U.S. service members have been ordered to turn off location services on their phones amid what the Pentagon describes as active threats against military personnel inside the United States. Department of Defense memo obtained by cybersecurity and intelligence reporter David DiMaffetta warns, turn off your location on all electronic devices. There are active threats against U.S. military in the continental U.S. So this is important. If you guys know any military people or are yourselves military or ex-military, make sure your location devices on your location, whatever you call it, the location part of your devices, make sure that's turned off. So any of the satellite tracking options that you might have on your phone. The memo continues, all U.S. service, turn off your location on all electronic devices. Specifics cannot be detailed, but they are from credible sources. There are active threats against U.S. military in the continental United States. In addition, the following apps are considered compromised: Uber, Snapchat, and something called Talabat. 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 So if you have Snapchat or Uber in particular on your phones, probably uninstall them and definitely turn off the location stuff here. The extraordinary warning comes as tensions with Iran escalate sharply following the strikes that killed the Ayatollah. President Trump returned to Washington from Mar-a-Lago Sunday night as Israel announced a new wave of strikes in the heart of Tehran. After reports that 3 U.S. soldiers were killed in Kuwait, Trump declared America will avenge their deaths and deliver the most punishing blow to the terrorists who have waged war against basically civilization, he said. He added that combat operations would continue at full force and said that there will be likely more deaths. Yep. Anyway, against the volatile backdrop, U.S. forces are now being warned that even everyday apps could pose threats as fears mount over cyber and targeting operations tied to the widening conflict. So, just something to keep in mind. Yeah, those wonderful cell phones in our pockets could be the tracker that a missile needs to come right through your window and blow you up. Or at least track you so that they know where you're going so that they can pick you up or kill you later or something. Who knows what they're going to do with it. Pretty wild, though. They're using Uber. Uber's out there helping. Not that surprised. Here's the other church story I mentioned. This one's weird just because this church is so huge. It says world's tallest church is practically complete after 144 years under construction. That is probably a long time to hold back an invoice, I would think. Almost a century and a half after construction began on the La Sagrada Familia, the exterior structure of the tallest church in the world is finally completed last Friday in Barcelona, Spain. How about that? The Basilica Temple Expiatory is officially named, and the only way I refer to it in casual conversation is now the tallest tower. It's called the Tower of Jesus Christ. Reached to its maximum height. It's been topped with the upper arm of a three-dimensional four-armed cross that is clad in glass and white enameled ceramic. So there you can see it being lowered into place. Last week we saw the upper arm of this roughly 56-foot tall cross, just a cross, 56 feet, fitted with the help of a giant crane. The final piece was nearly 15 feet tall, completes the grouping of 6 central towers of the church, and brings the basilica's height to a dizzying 566 feet tall. That is so crazy. Interestingly, the cross was built in Germany using white enameled ceramic tiles. Stone interior and glass were made at the Spanish region of Catalonia. It was then transported in parts back to Barcelona by ferry and trucks and finally assembled at the church. So there's the trucks bringing it in, I guess. Or a truck. There's the cross. But here's what I wanted to show you. That's all impressive. Look at this. It just literally dwarfs everything around it. It's ridiculously huge. While the exterior is technically complete, there's still work to be done over the next 8 years in the church, including decorative elements, the cladding of the arms of the cross, and sculptures including the Agnus Dei, or the Lamb of God. This will be created by Italian artist Andrea Mastrovito, who won a competition last year to design it. Wow. So it's done, but it's not done. I guess it's nearly done on the outside. The completion of the cross, the Tower of Jesus Christ, in effect, the exterior of the basilica, coincides with the 100th anniversary of Gaudi's death. Gaudi, Gaudi's death. The church notes it will hold commemorative events all through this year to celebrate the milestone. Hopefully, that will drum up enough interest among Catholics and visitors of other faiths to help get the remainder of the project over the finish line by 2034. So it's really going to be that much longer yet. So basically, this church probably will never be finished, but it's getting there. Look how huge it is. It's ridiculous, but I guess they wanted that big old church in the middle of Spain there. Pretty crazy. And nobody's tried to burn it down yet, so that's a good thing. That's a website called New Atlas, newatlas.com. I just thought I would mention that just because it's so huge. I've never seen a church that big before. Crazy. Cuban Coast Guard kills 4 people on Florida registered boat after it entered their waters and opened fire. Did you guys hear about this? Cuban Coast Guard killed 4 people in a Florida-registered speedboat after the vessel crossed into the nation's waters and opened fire. Cuban embassy said on X that the incident unfolded Wednesday morning when the speedboat approached 1 nautical mile northeast of the Alpino Channel in the Villa Clara province. The embassy said border guard troops confronted the speedboat, leading the crew of the Florida-registered boat to open fire on the Cuban personnel. Oh, that's not good. The commander of the Cuban vessel was injured in the shootout, while all 4 people on the Florida speedboat were killed and 6 more were injured. Wow. Cuban officials, so it's quite the shootout here. Cuban officials said the 6 injured in the Florida-registered speedboat were evacuated and have received medical assistance. Their nationalities are not known, so we don't actually know where they're from. But it is a Florida-registered vessel, so there's a pretty good guess there that at least some of them are Americans. U.S. authorities have not commented on the incident. It is unclear who was commanding the Florida-registered vessel. Pretty weird, huh?
As a promising young astrophysicist, during the Stalinist purges of the Soviet Union, Nikolai Kozyrev was sent to the Russian Gulag in the Arctic, where he reportedly developed his unconventional ideas about time. 10 years later, he was released, returned to science, and achieved his most significant work. Kozyrev proposed a theory he called torsion field theory, which postulated that time is an active physical substance with measurable properties that can vary, including density and flow rate. He said that time interacts directly with consciousness, sending energy and information, and he believed that curved reflective forms could focus or reflect this temporal energy. This led to the construction of a physical device consisting of polished aluminum sheets arranged in a cylindrical, spiral, or parabolic curve, large enough to enclose a seated human subject so a person can sit inside the structure. The organic geometry was chosen to reflect the torsion fields of a person's light body. One or more subjects would sit inside these Kozyrev mirrors, isolated from external stimuli, and asked to simply observe their inner experience. The subjects reported altered states of consciousness. They experienced remote viewing, had visions of distant locations, made contact with other entities, and some shared telepathic experiences with each other, including the transmission of information. During the Kosnechev experiments, conducted at the Institute of Clinical and Experimental Medicine in Siberia during the 1990s and 2000s, these experiments were conducted above the polar circle, where the plasma of aurora events seemed to directly interact with the mirror installation. The researchers specifically argued that proximity to the auroral oval, where aurora activity is concentrated, was experimentally significant because the plasma activity provided conditions that enhanced the effects they were observing. During high auroral activity periods, subjects in the Kozyrev mirrors experienced more clarity and specificity in their visions and psychic connections. The researchers proposed that the plasma being continuously fed into our environment by solar wind is a state of matter that carries structured information into our world and into our consciousness, and the Kozyrev mirrors act as a sort of amplifier for this information. The mirror reflects not just light, but future light, something Kozyrev discovered when he pointed his telescope ahead of Andromeda's visible position, where he received a signal that was traveling faster than light. Ulrike Grenoger is an Austrian researcher and science journalist who works in the area of consciousness, anomalous physics, and parapsychology. In 2005, Grenoger met with researchers of the Kozyrev mirrors to help humanity access this network of intelligent intercommunication. She proposes that there are multiple dimensions of conscious reality and warns that the global gravitational wave antenna network could be used for mass consciousness manipulation. Her solution is aligning with higher dimensional thought forms and language. and she points to the discourse on the 8th and 9th, found in the Nag Hammadi library, as an ancient description of multidimensional travel with the human light body. Grenoger has also built a Cozy Rev mirror in an underground location in Switzerland, and with the help of the Solari report, will be continuing research into this important phenomena. They are now seeking additional donors to help continue the project, and are inviting over a dozen patrons to join them in Switzerland for a meet and greet, and an opportunity to experience the underground Kozyrev mirror. Nikolai Kozyrev wrote that telepathy always depends on the density of time. When we can make time dense at will, we can make telepathy happen when we want it. Greg Reese reporting.
All right. How about that? The Kozyrev mirrors. Weird, huh? I don't know if you guys had ever heard of that before. I certainly had not before Greg's report on that. I thought it was kind of cool and very interesting. He does get a little bit new agey at times, but I think that's, he's not really a believer as far as being a Christian, so I'm not really surprised. But he does find some very interesting things to talk about, doesn't he? All right, let's see. Let's move on here. The Daily Mail sure has a lot of ads on their website. Trump's big price claim. Oh, yeah. The jaw-dropping chart that proves why ordinary Americans are furious at Trump's claims on prices as they struggle to pay their bills. Did you guys see the State of the Union the other day? I think it was Tuesday night. I did watch it. I watched it at 2x, though, so I could get through it quickly. But I thought it was pretty interesting. He's pretty good in those sorts of situations, and he really did make the Democrats look bad a couple of times by challenging them to stand up and support or clap at certain times, and they wouldn't do it. I mean, just for simple things like, stand up if you support the American people over illegal immigrants. And he stood there for what seemed like 4 or 5 minutes. It probably wasn't more than a couple minutes, but it seemed like a long time. And they would not stand and cheer and clap for the American people over illegal immigrants. So those types of things happened. I thought he did a good job on that, although there were some very clear, I think, in my opinion, very clear lies that he said as well. This would be one of them. Donald Trump declared in his State of the Union address that inflation is plummeting, quote unquote, and that his administration is driving prices down to the lowest level in 5 years. The roaring economy is roaring like never before, he said. So yeah, that got a few snickers, I think. On paper, the latest figures give him something to point to. Data from the Bureau of Labor Statistics show inflation rose 2.4% in the year to January, down to 2.7% in December. Compared with the eye-watering spikes in recent years, that counts as progress, but the fine print tells a story that may feel more familiar at the checkout line. Coffee lovers, brace yourself. Instant coffee is up 26.1% over the past year, with roasted coffee climbing 17.1%. So here's the chart I think they're talking about here on this article, so we'll go through this quickly. Top, price rises year on year. So instant coffee, roasted coffee, electricity is up 6.3%. I would say it's probably up a lot more than that in certain places. He did mention the whole AI data centers issue. And he said in his speech that he's going to make these companies, the AI companies, instead of making the customers of electric companies pay for AI data centers power, additional powers that they're needing, because they need lots of electricity to power AI data centers. Instead of that happening, he's going to make the AI companies pay for their own power plants, essentially. So I don't know how that would work exactly, but I do find it interesting that he did address that actually just very briefly in the speech the other night. All right, so instant coffee's up, roasted coffee's up, electricity is up, audio equipment is up. I would know about that. That's kind of my profession. Ground beef is up, bananas are up, women's outwear, watches, breakfast cereals, candy and gum, jewelry, cigarettes, frozen seafood, utility and gas, inpatient services, and funerals, all up. Even funerals are up 5.6%. That's because there's so many of them now after the CV-19 jabs. Says the squeeze doesn't stop there. Utility gas services risen 9.8% and electricity 6.3%. Anyway, and it goes on, talks about all these deeper things here that are mentioned. There are a few things that have fallen in price, such as eggs, moving and storage services are down, smartphones are down, hard to believe. Unleaded gas is down 8%, this says. Ship fares are down, sports tickets are down, men's suits, that's weird, but women's stuff was up, but men's suits are down. Weird. Televisions are down, tomatoes are down, and potatoes are down, according to this chart. Anyway, but you can see here that it's no wonder that people were a little disappointed in what he was saying because clearly just saying that we are, inflation is plummeting, lowest level in 5 years, is a little questionable. Let's just say he's not exactly telling the full truth there on that one. But I think everybody knows it. And it's kind of one of those things you expect a president in a speech like that to be touting and to be talking about. So this is something that I wanted to mention just because I think I said something about it last week, actually. Not the issues with this particular aircraft carrier, but just in general, aircraft carriers in the region are sitting ducks. And it seems like they're being sitting ducks on purpose. And hopefully nothing will happen, but you could see where a hypersonic missile that is strategically placed, even if it's friendly fire, such as something like what happened to the USS Liberty, if it's strategically placed by whoever it is, whether it's the Iranians or the Israelis, might get us into a wider, huger war somehow, pretty easily. So this article is on a website called 1945. Sewage problems and sailors who want out. Aircraft carrier USS Gerald R. Ford is being pushed to historic U.S. Navy limits. So this is apparently, one of the older aircraft carriers. USS Gerald R. Ford is heading toward the Middle East. It's there now. As tensions with Iran raise the possibility of military confrontation. Let's see, the article date on this is from 5 days ago. So it's been there for a while. I'm not really sure. There's no actual date. It just says from 5 days ago, so I don't know. But it's been there for a little while. The deployment is also exposing the human cost of keeping the carrier at sea for so long. Sailors and families are dealing with missed milestones, uncertainty, and rising fatigue as the ship moves toward what could become an 11-month deployment. Yeah, I think they were told it was just going to be a few weeks or something originally. Reports of sewage problems, long waits for working toilets have added to frustration on board. Even so, the Ford remains a central symbol of U.S. naval power, deterrence, and readiness during volatile regional movement. Let's see here. USS Gerald R. Ford has a message to Iran. It says, in recent days, it's been headed towards the Middle East with possibility of a military confrontation between the U.S. and Iran. Per the Jerusalem Post, USS Gerald Ford, after crossing the Mediterranean, is set to dock in Haifa in Israel. The Ford Carrier Strike Group, officially known as Carrier Strike Group 12, entered the Mediterranean after transiting the Strait of Gibraltar in movement reported by multiple outlets tracking the U.S. naval deployments. The U.S. Navy was not formally confirmed when the carrier will dock. So, another one of those situations, though, where it's just sitting out there, unfortunately, waiting to be hit. And I don't really know how much good it's really going to do sitting there, honestly. Extra long mission for the USS Gerald R. Ford. talking about where one sailor missed the death of his great-grandfather. Another is thinking about leaving the Navy after almost a year away from her toddler daughter. 2 more said the ship had sewage problems. Yeah. Apparently they were, some of the sailors were protesting and flushing things down the toilet in order to cause the problems. That was one of the stories. Who knows if that's true or not? Something that I heard, though. I definitely think that that's a possibility. Although, these people sign on to do this job, they know that that comes with the territory as far as missing out on things in their regular life. So I can't imagine that many people actually whining about that kind of stuff, which that's a big deal, don't get me wrong. But they know it when they sign up. So to have that be a reason is, to me, a little strange. Says Trump's decision to extend for a second time the deployment of the aircraft carrier is taking a toll on the ship's sailors and their families, and leading some to consider leaving the Navy when they return to home port. So I'm not sure if that will happen or not. I guess we'll see. So the ship has a crew of about 5,000 people. It is the world's largest aircraft carrier and the Navy's newest. It had been headed to the Mediterranean when it was rerouted to the Caribbean ahead of the Venezuela mission. So they've been at sea for a while. Anyway, further pictures and other information here on that. Howard Lutnick won't survive this video if we make noise. Lutnick was, in fact, close with Epstein. He was in business with him, and he invited Epstein to several events and bought a building from him. Why is Howard Lutnick lying again? Question mark. So this is a short video, 7-minute video. I don't have the audio patched in here so we could hear it, but I will link to this in the Substack post. And again, we do have a Howard Lutnick video that I wanted to play here when we get a little further into the program. Probably play it on the way out tonight, actually, because it's worth watching. For sure, it's a good report. All right, Netanyahu claims Jews created Christian values and founded America. It turns out the dumbest thing that Huckabee ever said was actually repeating what he heard Netanyahu claim only weeks before. How about that picture? Wow. New Christian right. What if everything you've been told about the foundations of your faith, your civilization, and your country is a story someone else wrote for you? Netanyahu made an outrageous claim not long ago. 3 claims, in fact, about America. Mike Huckabee and Christianity. A few weeks later, Huckabee repeated it, almost word for word. Each claim is a lie, and NXR explains why below. NXR is the name of this Substack. So here's what it says. This week, Mike Huckabee managed to detonate what might be the single most catastrophically stupid sentence ever uttered by a sitting U.S. ambassador. Somehow I'm not surprised. When Tucker Carlson pressed him on the biblical land promises of Genesis 15, Huckabee looked into the camera and said, "It would be fine if they took it all." He did say that. It's on camera. They being Israel. All being a swath of territory that currently includes Jordan, Syria, Lebanon, Iraq, and a generous slice of Saudi Arabia. By Saturday morning, 14 Arab and Muslim nations had issued a joint statement calling his remarks dangerous and inflammatory. Saudi Arabia had demanded that the State Department formally clarify whether the U.S. had just endorsed the annexation of the entire Middle East, and the Arab League was informing anyone within earshot that his comments were extremist and lacking any sound basis. Egypt called it a flagrant breach of international law, which is the phrase diplomats normally reserve for things like invading a neighbor, not for an ambassador doing a podcast. The joint statement from the foreign ministries of these nations was perhaps the most diplomatically significant thing that it contained, noting pointedly that Huckabee's remarks directly contradict the vision put forward by Trump. The State Department, which had not approved the comment, scrambled to say that it was taken out of context. Huckabee called it hyperbole, quote unquote. 14 sovereign nations called it a foreign policy catastrophe, and they were right. In one sentence delivered on a podcast at an airport, the U.S. ambassador to Israel set back 50 years of American diplomatic credibility in the Arab world, validated every conspiracy theory about American Zionist capture, handed Iran a recruitment poster, and made every moderate Arab government that has quietly accommodated American regional objectives look like a fool for having done so. That is some impressive output for a single sentence. The question worth asking, because it has not really been asked, is why Huckabee said it. He's not a stupid man. He is a former governor and a presidential candidate, a man who has navigated political minefields for decades. He knows that an ambassador speaks for his government, not for his theology. He knows that statements like this get transcribed, clipped, translated, and broadcast across regions before the plane is wheels up. So why does a man with his experience look into the camera and endorse Israel annexing a dozen countries? Where did he get this idea that this was the sort of thing an American ambassador could say without consequence? We found the answer. It was standing right next to him. And it says, the seed that bloomed into a catastrophe. So it's talking about how he got what he said basically from Netanyahu. Quote, and if the Maccabees had failed, Netanyahu said, there'd be no Judaism. There would be no Judeo-Christian civilization. There would be no Huckabees. There would be no United States. There would be no civilization of freedom. The wordplay on Huckabees got the laughs it was designed to get. Huckabee beamed on the cue. It was a good line. Also, dressed up in warmth and wit, a formal declaration of intellectual ownership over Western civilization, Christianity, and the founding of the United States, issued by a man whose government classifies Christianity as avodah zera, foreign worship is what that means, and whose police minister has described spitting on Christians as an ancient Jewish custom. 6 weeks later, Huckabee was posting virtually identical language on X as if it had been bubbled up from his own devotional. He said, my Christian faith is built on the foundation of Judaism, and without it, Christianity would not exist. Without the Judeo-Christian worldview, there would be no Western civilization, and without Western civilization, there would be no America. So anyways, he was just basically just repeating what Netanyahu said. So we don't have an ambassador to Israel, do we? He's literally Huckabee is literally just part of Israel at this point. There's no difference. Anyway, I thought that was certainly an interesting one for sure, and not at all surprising that Netanyahu's out there saying that kind of stuff, and then, of course, that Huckabee's repeating. All right, and then, again, breaking news that proves we are living in the end times. African killed 3 after mental health workers release him due to racism fears. A schizophrenic African immigrant who stabbed 3 people to death in Britain was free to carry out his violent rampage because mental health workers feared detaining him would be racist. An inquiry has heard. Says Valdo Calocane from Guinea killed students Barnaby Weber and Grace O'Malley, both 19 years old, at the University of Nottingham before stabbing caretaker Ian Cotes, age 65, stealing his van and running down 3 pedestrians. Wow. He was sentenced to an indefinite hospital order in January 2024 after admitting manslaughter by diminished responsibility and attempting murder, sparking anger from victims' families and a public inquiry to assess the events, acts, and omissions before the killings began its first day of hearings on Monday. So he killed all 3 of these. Ian Coates, Barnaby Weber, and Grace O'Malley Kumar. The inquiry heard Calocane tried to kick down a female neighbor's door in 2020, scaring her so much she jumped out of a window and injured her back hours after he was arrested and released for battering another neighbor's door. And it says mental health workers were leaning towards detaining the violent maniac after the first attack, but ultimately set him free. The team of professionals considered the research evidence that shows overrepresentation of young black males in detention. The inquiry was told. So yeah, they were being afraid of being called racist, so they let him go. And he went out there and killed these 3 people. Wow. Yeah, that's what happens when you bring a Neanderthal into modern civilization and expect him to act the way everyone else acts. No, they kill people. And they like doing it. Look at this one. This one's, speaking of end time stuff, breaking news that proves we're living in the end times. I don't know if this was an accident or not. This is weird. This is a futurism article. A realtor uses AI and accidentally posts a listing for a rental property with a demonic figure emerging from a mirror. So sometimes when you create a picture with AI, you get some weird artifacts. One could say that this was a weird artifact for sure. It says, genuinely the worst possible thing to scroll past before I fall asleep. Look at this. It just gives me chills just even looking at it, actually. This thing was what the AI, whatever AI was used, probably says. Yeah, ChatGPT. So ChatGPT generated this picture of this bathroom, which I don't know why, if you're a realtor, why would you use an AI for any sort of picture generation instead of just going to the place and taking an actual photo of what you're trying to sell or list or rent or whatever you're doing? Why wouldn't you just go take a picture? And then you would avoid having demonic artifacts in your picture like this. What is this thing? It says the real estate industry has seized on generative AI with passion. Realtors have made extensive use of the tech, manipulating photos of properties beyond recognition by giving facades and interiors a heavy coat of AI-generated paint. Oh, I see. Text descriptions of properties have turned into a heap of ChatGPT-generated buzzwords, devolving an already frustrating house hunt into a genuinely exasperating experience. Making sense of what a rental apartment actually looks like in the real world has regressed into a guessing game. We've already come across bizarre listings of inexplicably yassified houses with smoothed-over architecture features, misplaced trees, nonsensically rearranged furniture, and mangled props. So this is the kind of stuff that AI will do. Looking through pictures of a rental house, and just came across this demonic thing sticking out of the mirror. It says by now a listing for a property in the Washington D.C. area, that makes sense, has already taken the cake. Renters seeking a new home in the capital made a horrifying discovery while browsing listings, what can only be described as an eldritch horror poking her disfigured head out from somehow both sides, both the inside and outside of a bathroom mirror. In other words, it's the kind of nightmarish creature only a flawed AI algorithm could have come up with. And it's only a time-strapped realtor that could fail to notice before posting the picture for the whole world to see. The listing property in Fort Totten, a suburb of northern D.C., has since been taken down. Says, but other instances of the same listing still exist on other sites. So the picture is still out there, is what they're saying here. So how about that? Somebody that's a little tight on time and doesn't really error-proof check the photos that they're posting, posts a demonic figure in a mirror, both on the inside and outside of that. So I guess what they're doing is retouching photos, perhaps. They're taking maybe this was the real bathroom photo, and they're trying to make it look as nice as possible. Like with AI, you could take this photo of a bathroom and you could give it a better floor, or you could, if the tile tub was dirty, you could actually clean that up in AI, or maybe add a photo, add a painting or something to the wall or something like that. You could do things with it pretty easily just by giving it text-based commands. So I could see where you might want to do that, although you reach a point where you're overdoing it, like some of the things that they're talking about here, where they've smoothed over architectural features and misplaced trees and stuff. So you could go too far for sure. So I guess that's probably what they were trying to do, but the demonic side of the AI has crept into this picture. That was what I wanted to mention That is a weird one. Yikes. Anyway. All right, we'll move on here. Celia Farber Substack. Truth Barrier. Multiple Western media sources report that the Ayatollah has been killed, citing Israel and Trump, not their own reporting. Iranian media deny this and say he is actively commanding in the field. So this was the first reports. Now they have since come out and confirmed that he has been killed. So I thought that was weird that they were saying no, he's still out there commanding the troops. Absolutely surreal situation. What kind of war correspondence can be relied upon? Major news organizations don't seem to have their own war correspondents or sources. No, they don't really have people on the ground there anymore. They're just going off of, what they get over emails and text messages and stuff like that. So it's not really that surprising to me that they don't have any idea what's going on. All right, Wine Press Substack. Trump says there will likely be more U.S. casualties before it ends. That's the way it is. Says war will last 4 weeks at least as losses mount. 4 weeks. And sadly, there will likely be more before it ends. That's the way it is. Likely be more, but we'll do everything possible where that won't be the case. Meaning deaths, I'm sure. Yeah. Well, yeah, here's the quote that I mentioned earlier from this, what's his name? In Shrek. It's a risk he's willing to make. Some weird photos here. Operation Epic Fury. There you go. Instead of Epic Fury, I said Operation Epic Failure. Anyway, yep, that one is a Wine Press Substack article. Let's see what else here. U.S. takes heavy casualties in aircraft carrier attacked in war with Iran as Trump's seen partying. I don't know what this is. Let's look. Trump seen partying before the attack was launched. Conflicts arise in Strait of Hormuz. Lindsey Graham says America first now means kill as many people as possible before they kill you. So there you go. They redefined it. So now America first means that, apparently. According to old Lady G, Lindsey Graham. Since U.S. launched Operation Epic Fury and Israel's Lion's Roar, okay, so they have a name for their attack as well. Lion's Roar. It has been confirmed that Americans have died, according to an update from U.S. CENTCOM. Mentioned this earlier. 3 U.S. service members have been killed in action. 5 are seriously wounded. That's what's mentioned here. I don't know if there are others. That's just mentioned in this article. Yeah, he literally did the meme from the Shrek movie. Some of you may die, but it's a sacrifice that I am willing to make. Yeah, he literally is saying that. Not that surprising, I suppose. A couple of natural news articles. Look at this one. Software engineer accidentally gains control of 7,000 robot vacuums, exposing serious security flaw. Do you think? Wow. A software engineer accidentally accessed 7,000 robot vacuums across 24 countries. Accidentally. In air quotes, I guess. Across 24 countries due to a security flaw allowing unauthorized access to live camera feeds, microphones, floor plans, and device tracking. The vulnerability was discovered using AI coding tools, lowering the barrier for uncovering security flaws, whether accidentally or maliciously, raising concerns about AI amplifying cyber risks. DJI patched, I guess that's a company, patched the flaw after being altered, but experts warn that smart devices prioritize convenience over security, leaving users unknowingly exposed. This follows other smart home scandals like Ring, Google Nest, and hacked baby monitors, fueling fears that IoT devices could become government or corporate surveillance tools. I don't think could be is really part of the equation. I think that they are being used as that. Users should update firmware, disable unnecessary features, use strong passwords, and monitor network traffic to mitigate risks. In other words, quit your job and just monitor what your vacuum's doing all day long. But the broader issue remains: smart homes may trade privacy for convenience. Software engineer's innocent attempt to control his DJI Romo robot. But this says, and this picture anyway, I don't know if it's the same thing, says it's an iRobot by Roomba. I don't know. Software engineer's innocent attempt to control his Romo robot vacuum with a PlayStation 5 controller inadvertently exposed a massive security flaw, granting him access to nearly 7,000 robot vacuums across 24 countries. The incident, first reported by The Verge, underscores the growing privacy risks posed by internet-connected smart home devices, particularly as AI-powered coding tools make it easier for unintended vulnerabilities to be exploited. Yeah, I'm wondering how he did this on accident. He was experimenting with his $2,000 DJI Romo, a high-end autonomous vacuum, roughly the size of a small fridge. Okay, well, it's not this then. They're showing the wrong picture here. Roughly the size of a small fridge, when he stumbled upon the alarming oversight. Using Anthropic's Claude code, an AI coding assistant, he reverse engineered how the vacuum communicated with DJI's cloud servers to build a custom remote control app. Okay, but instead of gaining access only to his device, he found himself with administrator-level permissions for thousands of others. I didn't bypass, I didn't crack, brute force, whatever. The software engineer told The Verge, I found my device was just one in an ocean of devices. The flaw allowed him to access live camera feeds from strangers' homes, activate microphones remotely, generate 2D floor plans of residences, track device locations via IP addresses, and monitor battery levels, cleaning schedules, and obstacle logs. Wow. That is insane. So the lesson learned here is don't have a robot vacuum in your house. That's all you got to do to stop it. Weird. Breaking news that proves we're living in the end times. Robot vacuums does it for me. I don't know about you. This one I kind of stumbled across, and it led me down a different path. But so I wanted to mention both things in case anybody wants to look at this. I thought this was interesting just because of the headline. Shipwreck hunters find lost luxury steamer in Lake Michigan after 60-year search. After a 60-year search, maritime explorers located the wreck of the luxurious steamer called Lac La Belle, which sank in Lake Michigan during a violent storm in 1872. The discovery was made using side-scan sonar aided by a critical clue from a fellow wreck hunter named Ross Richardson. Built in 1864, it sank in 1872. Built in 1864 as a passenger steamer, the Lac La Belle was later repurposed as a freighter. It sank in 1872 while carrying cargo and 53 passengers, with 8 lives lost in the disaster. The wreck remained hidden for 153 years until its recent rediscovery. So that is crazy. Despite being underwater for over a century, the wreck is well preserved with a solid hull and intact oak interiors, though quagga mussels cover its exterior. The upper cabins and the upper cabins have collapsed. I think that's maybe in part due to the fact that it's not salt water, wouldn't you? I would think that was probably the case. The fact that it's not salt water. Invasive mussels threaten Great Lakes shipwrecks, accelerating the decay and prompting wreck hunters to document them before they deteriorate further. Okay. So anyways, apparently they found this ship. So I was going to show a little video clip of this just to see what it looked like. And I started looking through this. And this video doesn't go with this story, apparently. This is talking about, I mean, it's similar. It's a similar story. It's a similar video type thing. Search for a lost shipwreck of Paul. Search for the lost shipwreck of Paul. And this video, I started watching a little bit of it, and I realized there was somebody in it that I knew of, and he's a guy that I showcased before in some End Times Dates episodes when we're talking about the Third Temple and so forth, a guy named Bob Cornuke. And he is mentioned talking about the lost shipwreck of the St. Paul the Apostle, and how the shipwreck was found, and it had the anchors and everything that was exactly where he thought they would be based on what the Bible said. So this video that's embedded here actually is not directly related to this story, but it might be worth a watch if you want to see a interesting Bob Cornuke video here where he's talking about biblical wreckage that was essentially, found quite a few years ago now. Pretty interesting. So I thought I would mention that. All right, let's take one more quick little break here.
Howard Lutnick, currently serving as the 41st United States Secretary of Commerce, joined Cantor Fitzgerald in 1983, rising rapidly to become its president and CEO at age 29, establishing himself as a prominent Wall Street figure for over 3 decades, rebuilding Cantor Fitzgerald after the devastating loss of 658 employees, including his brother, in the September 11th, 2001 attacks, an event he somehow missed.
Jeffrey Epstein was your neighbor. He was your neighbor for 10 years. How well did you know him?
All right, so we are in number 11, and he lives in number 9.
The head of Cantor Fitzgerald, Howard Lutnick, just happened to be out of the office that day that the terrorists struck.
When I was talking to Cantor Fitzgerald brokers and bankers in the days leading up to 9/11, they themselves were buying these airline puts. They told me, based on rumors that were coming out of Alex Brown associated with Buzzy Krongard. So this looks to me as if CIA insiders knew enough about what was going on, but chose to make money rather than blowing the whistle.
He literally watched the plane go into the building, go into the World Trade Center. Amazing story. That alone is an amazing story. He was delayed because his wife insisted that he finally, after years, take his child to school.
Recently, taking the economic wheel on the Trump administration's second term, Lutnick publicly championed and defended the tariffs as essential for national security and economic rebalancing, dismissing concerns about their legality or economic fallout, calling worries about Supreme Court invalidation silly.
In the very unlikely event that you're wrong, what is the contingency plan? You'd have to refund these tariffs? How the hell does that work?
To think about silly things is a waste of time.
The mechanism offered companies an upfront payment of 20 to 30% of the duties paid in exchange for assigning their legal claim to any refund, effectively a litigation finance bet that the tariffs would be ruled unlawful, triggering government repayments of potentially hundreds of billions in collected duties. 175 billion at last count. Many have been quick to debunk the possibility of Lutnick scamming the United States. It is all based on a 2025 Wired magazine article that claimed the firm had already completed a $10 million deal in refund rights, a claim that remains a he said, she said between media reports and company denials. Regardless, Lutnick's myriad of Epstein connections is raining down like meteors from the sky.
We rebuild our house. We move in 2005. Okay? Jeffrey Epstein is arrested in like 2008, I think, or something like that.
Right.
So knock on the door. His assistant on like a Saturday says, Mr. Epstein, your neighbor would like to invite you over for coffee.
Nick, I think you understand the root of concern here. It's the way you described very emphatically your first encounter with him in his apartment, said you were disgusted, would never have any contact with him again.
My wife and I decided that I will never be in the room with that disgusting person ever again. Oh, so I was never in the room with him socially, for business, or for even philanthropy. If that guy was there, I wasn't going because he's gross.
Did you in fact make the visit to Jeffrey Epstein's private island?
I did have lunch with him as I was on a boat going across on a family vacation. To suggest there was anything untoward about that in 2012, I don't recall why we did it.
Lutnick is referencing a supposed innocent trip to Epstein Island referenced in an Epstein email that reveals creepy details about the ages of the children, a constant red flag in the Epstein emails. This is followed up 3 years later with an invite to Jeffrey Epstein to an intimate event for Hillary Clinton at Cantor Fitzgerald from Lutnick, followed by another email 2 years later thanking Epstein for a donation in honor of Howard Lutnick.
Yeah. That's my story. A one and absolutely done.
This isn't a Trump issue. This is a reminder that the 41st United States Secretary of Commerce works for us, we the people. John Bound reporting for InfoWars.
There you go. There you go. What is so darn funny, Howie? I think that's a good question John Bound asks there. He's constantly laughing. I think he's demonically possessed or something. I don't know what else would cause somebody to be laughing all the time like that. Seems like he is. It's just all funny. It's all funny. All right, I wanted to mention this one just because this is yet another wrinkle here to the whole Iranian thing. Former Iranian President Ahmadinejad, however you say it, Ahmadinejad, I think, reportedly was killed in the first round of Israeli strikes. He was, I guess, with some of the other military folks. Says he said Israel should be erased from the map and paid the price. Hardliner former Iranian President Ahmadinejad was reportedly killed in the first round of Israeli strikes inside Iran. Iranian media said he was killed in a strike. So I don't know if he was with some of the other military leadership or what he was doing there exactly, but he was under house arrest for taking part in a palace coup attempt with regime reformists. So I hadn't seen him in a while, but you guys probably remember him. He was, the reason I brought him up was, well, here it says, he served as Iran's sixth president from 2005 to 2013, rising from relative obscurity as mayor of Tehran to defeat establishment figure Rafsanjani in a surprise runoff in 2005. So what I remember about him, though, is Mr. Dane mentions oftentimes on some of the Global Alert News broadcasts that Ahmadinejad was the leader, the only one I know about, who would come to the floor of the UN and talk about how Iran was being purposely weather warfared against. In other words, there were droughts and they were denying rain. Whoever that was, you know, the powers that be, were denying rain to Iran, and he was saying that type of stuff on the floor of the UN. And Mr. Dane talked about that oftentimes, and this was the guy who was doing it. Well, he's dead. So anyway, just happened, I guess, maybe today, but that was a weird one. That is a Gateway Pundit article. And then this Not the Bee article was pretty good info on this Austin shooter. See, it says Austin mass shooter was Muslim from West Africa wearing an Iranian flag shirt, and a Quran was found in his car. Property of Allah, his shirt says. Yeah. So anyway, the video here is the aftermath of some of the shooting where police were there trying to help some of the victims. So further information here on this Not the Bee article, which they usually do more lighthearted, funnier type stuff, but they do cover kind of everything. All right, and then there's this one I thought was kind of a, I don't know if you call it challenging, but it's certainly worth a read. Jesus said, "I am not praying for the world. Is Jesus praying for you?" ? So this is mostly all scripture-based, but it is somewhat challenging if you're a believer and want to read through this. I'll start it out, and you guys can read more if you're interested. Western Christianity has a very poor and inaccurate view of Jesus Christ as compared to the writings, the words of Jesus, and the writings about Jesus that are recorded in the New Testament portion of the Bible. When Jesus walked the earth, he demanded total loyalty to himself as the Son of God and the Son of Man, even over and above our loyalty to family members. This is a hard truth for almost all Christians today who don't want to believe that Jesus could be so direct and forthright, as it goes against Christian teaching. For example, a passage from Matthew that I have quoted frequently in my articles is this one. This is written by this Brian Shilhavies, who is talking here. So here's what he wrote from Matthew 10:34 through 39. Do not suppose that I have come to bring peace to the earth. I did not come to bring peace, but a sword. For I have come to turn a man against his father, a daughter against her mother, a daughter-in-law against her mother-in-law. A man's enemies will be the members of his own household. Anyone who loves his father or mother more than me is not worthy of me. Anyone who loves his son or daughter more than me is not worthy of me. And anyone who does not take his cross and follow me is not worthy of me. Whoever finds his life will lose it, and whoever loses his life for my sake will find it. Most Christians choose to believe that Jesus did not really mean what he said here, as it contradicts so much Christian teaching on the value of our natural biological families. This is a comment I recently received from a reader that illustrates this. So this comment is pretty interesting. I did read through this. It's kind of long, but let me read just the first part. You'll get the idea. So this person emailed this to Brian, who wrote this article, before he wrote this article. He said, the reason I'm writing here is because I am literally disturbed by the words of Jesus that you have made reference to many times in your articles, which is what I just read, that Matthew 10, verse 34 thing. Is this a direct, accurate quote from Jesus, or is Matthew paraphrasing a bit? Jesus is all about love. This is a universal belief. This quote from Matthew makes Jesus sound like some guru who demands total obedience and dedication. I cannot fathom having to make a choice between loving your father and mother or just Jesus. Worse yet, leaving the family behind in the process. That does not embrace the meaning of love that Jesus spoke of elsewhere. I can't help but think that Jesus was being egocentric by invoking a total love sacrifice to him, otherwise you're not worthy. See, I would say, just a sidebar here, I would say that someone who doesn't actually believe would write something like this. Just the way I look at it. Why can't we take the middle road and love our neighbor as ourselves and also love Jesus at the same time without being fanatical about it? So, there you go. Very few people can be disciples, and I doubt current or past disciples had love for their fellow man as well as a sincere love for Christ. When you get a chance, I'd like to hear your comments. So that was the person who wrote that to Brian Shilhavy. So this is Brian talking again. He says, the truth is not comfortable, and it never was meant to be. As the ruler of this current world is the father of lies, and everything in this world culture reflects the lies of Satan, including Christianity and all religions. There is no middle road with Jesus, as so many Christians want to believe. The world either loves you or hates you. If you love and cherish the things of the world will love you back because it has leverage over you. If you hate the world will hate you because it has no leverage over you. The reader who wrote this above is obviously not well read in the scriptures and actually admitted this in the full comment. Because Matthew was not the only one who wrote this. The truth written by Matthew was common knowledge during the days of Jesus, as almost all of them had left their families to follow Jesus. And other writers of the Gospels wrote very similar statements about what Jesus said on this topic. And it mentions Luke 21 here and Mark 13. And then he says, Jesus did not come to earth to make the earth a better place to live, which is a common false teaching in Christianity. Jesus came to declare war against the ruler of this world, and he forced people to choose sides. To choose Jesus and choose to be a disciple is to choose the narrow path and to choose to live a difficult life of persecution and suffering, the same life that he lived. This is very evident in John chapter 17, which is the record of Jesus' last prayer, which he prayed while he was still with his disciples just before he was executed. In Jesus' prayer to the Father recorded in this chapter, he made it clear that he was not praying for the world, but only those who stood against the world and were suffering because of it. He also did not pray that the disciples would be taken out of the world to relieve their suffering, but that they would be protected from Satan so that they could bear testimony to the truth. So I think you could look at that too in the whole, pre-trib argument. He didn't pray for people. He didn't pray for his disciples to not have to go through tribulation, is what I'm saying. So that was my little sidebar here. So anyway, there's more here actually on this. I thought it was pretty good, and helps you think about things maybe slightly different than you did before, as far as that whole idea goes. So probably worth a look. That's on vaccineimpact.com, actually. They have some pretty good Christ-centric articles on there. Geoengineeringwatch.org. The latest Global Alert News broadcast called Weather Warfare Whiplash. America's hottest winter temperature on record just happened. From chemical ice nucleation flash freezes to ionosphere heater-induced high-pressure heat domes and the record high temperatures they create, climate engineering operations are wreaking havoc on an already badly damaged world, unfolding an accelerating biosphere collapse. Further fuels global controller total desperation. This is exactly what Geoengineering Watch has stated on the record for over a decade and a half. Weather, chemical, biological warfare is raging in skies all over America and the world. Are Americans ultimately being treated any differently than other targeted populations? Even as the planet's primary life support systems are failing, the powers that shouldn't be are tripling down on their devastating and destructive practices and policies, with weather warfare at the top of the list. Anyway, I will say we did a couple of edits on this show to get the YouTube version of this jam-packed with new and the latest, greatest information. We were even editing this thing yesterday afternoon before we published it. Because, the radio version can only be so long. The YouTube version can be any length. So the YouTube version from this weekend's show, again, Weather Warfare Whiplash. This is episode 551. The YouTube version of this show is about, 10 or 15 minutes longer than the radio show. So if you happen to catch it on the radio, you might want to go back and even check out the YouTube of it. Or it's the same version on BitChute and Rumble as well. So he does have channels on those platforms too, if you would prefer, versus YouTube. But there's extra content available in the video version versus the radio version of the show this week. So a little insider information there. I should know because I was the one doing the editing. So anyway, and then we like to look at the old scheduled weather here, the map, at least for the next few days. I guess it's March 7th through 11th, so starting in a few days. But it's going to be way above normal in the east. Way above. So basically all red here, clear out to the Midwest. From north to south and then clear to the Midwest. It's crazy. And then near normal out west. So I guess the geoengineers aren't going to be doing their cool down quite as much here, although you can see Alaska is below normal for this date range. Again, March 7th through 11th. So that's what we're looking at. So it's going to be warm, looks like. All right, and then the climate reanalyzer, just to kind of further take that last map, just another step further here. This is starting tomorrow. Days 1 through 3, so really starting tomorrow for the next 3 days. Where I am, we're going to have 13 degrees above normal. But you can see it's normal. It's warm everywhere, except in the upper northeast area. It's below normal up there. But so the geoengineers, I guess, are still working, or they've done their work and maybe moved out for a while, and this is just the remnants of it, perhaps. Because you can see the rest of the U.S. is pretty heated up here. 15, 16, 17 degrees above normal down here. Even Montana, look at this, 16 degrees above normal. And we're 13 where I am. So it's going to be pretty warm next few days. And then days 4 to 6, even warmer. 22 degrees above normal where I am. That's probably about the hottest spot. 24 degrees in Virginia. 24 degrees above normal, I mean. So it's going to be way warm coming up. This is starting March 5th. So it's going to feel like summer. All the trees and everything's going to be budding. Look at this. So this is what happens when the chemical cool downs go away, when they move on out and the temperatures rebound naturally. We are going to be 21 degrees above normal. Pennsylvania, 29 degrees above normal. So it's going to be really warm for this first part of March. So this is 7 to 10 days out, so starting March 8th. So a week from now. It's going to be really warm. And that's as far as this map goes. So we go from warm to warmer yet. Anyway, just want to mention that. And this, if they would stop the spraying of the chemical ice nucleation type events where they take the moisture that they generate, or they can basically control the moisture from the Gulf and then chemically cool that down, they can cool down the eastern half of the U.S. It's harder for them to cool down the western half of the U.S. from what I've seen. They don't do it as much for whatever reason. And I don't know if it's because of the high-pressure heat dome that they have sitting over here. There's a heat dome that sits here and pushes the jet stream up and over California to keep California in drought. So it sends the jet stream over and above, and Washington, Oregon, and Victoria out here in Canada all get the cooler weather and the moisture. And it gets routed around and then chemically ice nucleated as well. And then, again, the eastern half of the U.S. gets the cool temperatures typically, but for whatever reason, they're not doing that coming up over the next week or so. Again, this is the scheduled weather, so this you can take it to the bank that that's what's happening because of the people that do the climate modeling for all these temperature organizations, all these weather organizations. They're all government defense contractors and stuff. So they know what they're doing, unfortunately, and that weather is, at least the temperatures are going to be what happens. So stay tuned on that. All right, roundup of top climate and economy news for this week. Greenland's largest glacier could soon reach a tipping point. Greenland's glacier is one of those ones that's so huge, and on the land, if it does melt and go into the ocean, that could cause sea level rise to some degree, although I don't know how much. But typically you don't really see that because if you have glaciers melting that's already in the water, that's not going to raise the ocean levels. Look at this. Alaska's melting glaciers are revealing long-lost frozen bodies. Across Alaska and neighboring parts of Canada, groups of volunteers, scientists, and in some cases military personnel are searching for half a dozen other large plane crashes they believe are still hidden in glacial ice. Wow. National Geographic link. Because of the ice melting, I guess. Glacial ice. That's crazy. Anyway, lots of crazy weather stuff on there. And then we're talking earlier about Bibi rewriting, the foundations of Christianity. This is just another example of that. This isn't him though. This is someone else here in the world of Judaism. New study rewrites the New Testament temple incident. Jesus was just hungry and felt cheated. And very Jewish and pro-temple he was. So now they're rewriting the temple story here, where he's turning over the tables and so forth. So here's what this says. So again, this is, I think, proving that we are living in the end times. They're having to rewrite this stuff. So the story's been told for 2,000 years. Jesus storms into the temple, overturns the tables and money changers, and drives out the merchants in a blaze of divine righteousness. It became one of the foundational images of Christianity's self-portrait. The pure against the corrupt, the sacred against the profane, the new against the old. For centuries, it was also wielded as a cudgel against Jews, framed as divine condemnation of Jewish commerce, Jewish institutions, Jewish leadership. A new peer-reviewed study, so check this out, a new peer-reviewed study said that reading is wrong, and that the real story, I'll put it in quotes, the real story, is far more human and far more Jewish. So get ready. You ready? The study, published in the journal called Cogent Arts and Humanities, was authored by Dr. Haggai Olshansky of the University of Warsaw, along with Alan Silverman of Philadelphia and Lev Kosygins of Oxford. So there you go. You have a bunch of pointy-head intellectuals who have rewritten this. So here's what it says. It argues what has been called the temple cleansing. It was not a theological statement, not an act of divine wrath, and not a protest against Jewish institutions. It was a fight over coins, specifically because a tired, hungry Galilean pilgrim discovered that the coins that he'd been carrying were worth far less than he thought that they were. Olansky told JNS that scholars don't aim to persuade religious believers, but rather to analyze texts, examine their historicity, and to identify the different changes which were made and why these changes were done. He and his colleagues say that their explanation, unlike others, is based solely on what's written in the text. Oh yes, of course. The Gospel of Mark, the earliest written account, places a telling detail immediately before the temple episode. Jesus arrives in Jerusalem late, surveys the temple, and leaves without incident. The text of Mark reads, "And he entered Jerusalem and went into the temple, and when he had looked around at everything, it was already late, and he went out to Bethany with the 12. The following morning," Mark states plainly, "he was hungry, and seeing in the distance a fig tree in leaf, he went to see if he could find anything on it. When he came to it, he found nothing but leaves, for it was not the season for figs. And he said to it, 'May no one ever eat fruit from you again.'" Only then does Mark describe the confrontation with the money changers. So this intellectual person here, Olshansky, reads that sequence with precision. So he has it right. No one else up till this guy has ever figured out what Mark actually meant. In the morning, we actually see that he is very hungry, because when he sees a fruitless tree, he curses it. This is very human. When you're hungry, you're a bit short. He goes to the temple again to look for the money changers, and something happens again. So you can see where this is going. This is total nonsense, total craziness, that he actually wants to believe that Jesus was just hungry and was upset about his money conversion. So anyway, it goes on. I don't know if it's worth spending more time on, but I just thought it was kind of funny, just because they're trying to rewrite biblical history here. And don't forget, when it's all digital, they can easily do that. So anyway, it's apparently not what you thought it was. So you don't actually know the Bible at all. You just thought you did. Anyway, total craziness. I know that was, I thought, kind of a ridiculous one to end with. But anyway, there it is. And don't forget, you're here. So let's see what you guys are saying on the old chat here before we go tonight. And it's kind of getting late here. It looks like there's a lot of comments. So let's see if there's any, over 200. That's a lot. Any bets on what a barrel of oil will trade for tomorrow? That's a good question. I don't know how fast that will change. He's got a game over emoji here. Yeah, I think it will go up. I don't know how much, but it could be crazy. I don't know if it'll kind of balance out as we go, or if it will get worse as it goes, as far as the cost of a barrel of oil. It's a good question, though. Does anyone ever wonder how much this conflict is being executed by AI? It all feels so surreal. Well, you can be sure AI is involved. I don't know in the big decisions. I don't think so. It seems to be Trump, the Trump AI. I think that's who's making the decisions. But he's making the decisions based on what Israel wants, from what I can tell. Oh, here we go. Emily says Google says that a Lamborghini electric vehicle is, ready for this, $713,800. Wow. An EV Lambo. That's funny. $714K. The Take It to the Lord series is heart gripping. Excellent work there, Doug. Thanks, Susan. Appreciate that. Yeah, that was a lot of fun to do that series. There are 15 total episodes. Some are better than others, but they all have their moments. I think part 4 is my favorite, but Emily says part 8 had me bawling my eyes out. So good. So thank you guys. Yeah, appreciate that. I may link to one of those in the Substack post for folks that haven't seen any of those yet, which I'm sure there's some out there. I thought it was number 8. Maybe it was number 4. Number 4 was the one about Ron Wyatt and talking about the blood on the mercy seat. Jesus' blood on the mercy seat. So it's probably that one I'm thinking, because I think you mentioned that before. But 8 was good too, in a different way. I think 8 was also about some Ron Wyatt stuff, but it's been a while. I have to look. You make the videos and then you move on to other things, and it's like you don't really dwell on stuff that you did in the past. But yeah, with this World War III pending thing that's happening at the moment, I have a feeling that things are going to change pretty quickly. Probably for the worse, unfortunately. But we have to endure it so that we can experience Jesus' return. I do feel like it's imminent. Probably 2028. I haven't really shifted from that at all. I've said that ever since early 2019. But that's not based on my date and time. That was based on a series that I worked on back in 2018, stating that Jesus' return would be Feast of Trumpets, which is September, sometime in September, third week of September, basically, 2028. So I think that's certainly a reasonable thing to consider, even if that doesn't happen. At least we are keeping things in mind as far as being watchers and being people of Jesus's family who are hopefully supporting each other and doing what we can to make others aware of Jesus Christ and his message and the salvation message as well. And I think it's important to keep relaying that information and to keep your relationship with Jesus front and center in your life, because that's really what it's about. And yes, it is a priority. It needs to be a priority, and it's more important than your family members or anyone else around you. It is your relationship with Jesus that matters the most. So I'll leave on that note tonight, and hopefully you guys have a blessed week this week, and we'll get back together again next Sunday night, the 8th, which would be at 9 p.m. Central. So we'll do it again then. Hopefully you guys will stay in touch if you need to. Feel free to leave comments on videos and things like that. Matt says, same Doug, I'm with that timeline. You confirmed what I thought. I calculated, just wondering if the blood moon tomorrow may push it back to 2029 Feast of Trumpets. As far as I know, none of that would be changed. I mean, I can't see how any of that would affect it. The blood moon is just yet another sign in the heavens, I think, indicating that Jesus' return is imminent. And of course, it's up to God. It's up to God the Father. It's up to Jesus, the Word of God, when He comes back. And that will be when the timing is exactly perfect and right, and there's no getting around that. So personally, I think that won't really shift as far as any blood moons or anything like that goes. So I don't think there's any worrying about any of that stuff. It's all in God's hands, right? So blessings, you guys. Hope you have a good one, and catch you guys again next week. Love y'all. Talk to you again real soon.